Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's a bright, sunny morning here in Kampala, and wherever you are joining us from, we are glad that you have logged in for this webinar. I'm looking at the list of our panelists, and all of them are already in, and I'm really excited about our discussion today. All we need to do is just give a minute or so to allow for more attendees to come in, and then we'll be ready to start our discussion. But you're very welcome. In fact, right now, let me share with you our program for today so you know exactly how this webinar will be running. There on your screen is our program for today. Just take some time to view it as we allow for more people to log in. I think let's also use this time, since we're both on the Zoom platform and on social media, that's Twitter and Facebook. For those of you that have Facebook accounts, I'd like to actually ask, without logging out, please go to your Facebook, look for the Castle page, which is at Castle ORGUG. Just find that page and share this video so that as many people can follow the discussion that we're having. All right, I'm doing the same thing so that I'm leading by example. If you could just go to your Facebook and share the video so that we have more people attending this webinar. Excellent. And just, all right. Again, good morning, and you're very welcome for this webinar coming to you on Zoom and on social media, Facebook and Twitter. I'm your host, Iguma Gabriel. I'll be moderating the discussion today. As we wait for just a few more people to log in, you have seen the program, but also would like to start this off with a word of prayer. So I'd like to invite Ms. Jackie Rwanda to lead us in a word of prayer as we start our webinar today. Jackie, over to you. All right, I did see Jackie earlier on. She probably has dropped off.
I'm here.
Jackie, are you back? Okay, please, Jackie, go right ahead.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you for an opportunity to gather and share in wisdom, share in knowledge, and share in understanding. Lord God, we thank you, Lord, for an opportunity to be able to put together things that will move our nation forward, to put together ideas that will move our nation forward. Heavenly Father, we pray that as we do that this morning, the network shall be clear, there shall be no interruptions. We ask, Heavenly Father, that every individual that is supposed to be attending this webinar shall do so, that you'll avail them the time and you protect their schedule, Lord God, so that for the next 3 hours, they shall have an uninterrupted time of engagement. Lord, we pray for our panelists. We pray for our presenter. We pray for the moderator as well, that the session will run excellently, Lord God, that all the ideas prepared, all the thoughts planned to be shared shall come through clearly, Lord, that communication will be clear, that those who are sharing and those who are listening will be at the same wavelength, Heavenly Father. We ask that by the end of this session, Heavenly Father, we will come up with deliberations that will move our nation forward. We give you praise, we give you honor. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Jackie. And again, a warm welcome to everyone. I have to keep saying that because the numbers keep growing and certain people have not been welcomed. But probably this is the last time during this webinar that I'm saying welcome. My name is Iguma Gabriel, privileged to be the moderator today as we talk about tourism. So that we can capture your thoughts, if you're on social media, if you post anything in relation to this discussion, please use the two hashtags. We're using CASO webinar, and we're using Thrive Tourism. So CASO webinar and Thrive Tourism. Once you use those hashtags, it will ensure that our rapporteurs are actually able to pick up on your comment and include it in the document that will come out at the end of the discussion we're having today. We would like to hear from you, and there's two ways in which we would like to hear from you. The first is through using the Q&A tab that appears at the bottom of your screen. For some devices, that's on the side of your screen, but it's a tab that's labeled Q&A. If you have a question, you have a comment, please use that tab. We will be visiting that tab. All our panelists will be visiting that tab. And so if you have a question or comment, just put it there. If it's a question, our panelists will be able to respond to you once you put that there. We will also use polls. So every 30 minutes or so, a poll question will appear on your screen. Just read the question and then pick out the option that applies most to you. So the one that's closest or exactly your situation, that's the option that you will take. Panelists, unfortunately, you are observers when it comes to the poll. So you will be with me in the tally center to see what the views of the attendees are on a particular aspect. This webinar is brought to you by CASO, which is the Center for Advanced Strategic Leadership. And now it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Christine Ondoa, who is not new to many of us, to give some remarks on behalf of CASO that's convening us. Doctor, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of CASO, the Center for Strategic Advanced Leadership, I want to take this opportunity to welcome everyone, especially our panelists who have set aside time to be with us this morning. In CASO, we came up with this idea, this strategy during COVID or post-COVID, how we can improve our services to our nation in all the sectors. And as Gabriel mentioned, this morning we are looking at the tourism sector. And we would like to share ideas, we would like to share discussions on how we can improve this sector to be the best after COVID, best during COVID. And we would like to really have your ideas come in. And even after these discussions, we will be open to receiving ideas from all our people who are attending this webinar this morning. I would like to thank our board chair and even the other board members for having been very active in this opportunity that God has availed for us during this time. We've had several other meetings with other sectors, and I can tell you it has been an opportunity for us to learn from many of the sectors. And also the sectors have given us testimony that they have learned from what Castle has been able to put together. So I take this opportunity once again to welcome you to this webinar. Just to redeem time, my remark will be as brief as this so that we give more time for our presenters and more time for discussion. Please enjoy the discussions and enjoy the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Doctor did mention that we're ready to listen to our discussants. I'd like to introduce who we have in the room, our panelists for today. And this is in no particular order, though I will still start with our special guest because we're really glad that today we have the Commissioner, Assistant Commissioner Tourism, Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Mr. Liazi Vivian. We're very glad to have you are logged in and ready for this discussion. We have Ms. Laura Kagame. She is the founder and managing director, Traboneza. We also have Captain Tony Rubombora. He is founder and chief executive officer, Eagle Air Limited. We have Ms. Lily Ajorova. She is CEO of Uganda Tourism Board. And we have Mr. Amos Wekesa, founder and CEO of Great Lakes Safaris Limited. He will be presenting the think piece from Castle. So that's who we have on our panel, and we're glad that all our panelists are in and ready to have this discussion. So let's dig right into it. The tourism sector was one of the first sectors to feel the effects of COVID-19, as almost all travel within and across countries was restricted, with different countries implementing different levels of lockdowns. With the rate at which revenue from the sector has been growing and with its evident contribution to the job market, it is hard to ignore the contribution of the tourism sector to the economy. But sadly, tourism has not often been thought of as a big foreign exchange earner for us. Tourism has also been thought about in terms of it's something for foreigners. So as these big revenues have been heavily slashed by the lockdown and COVID-19, we have to think about how we can make our tourism sector thrive, even in these hard times. There is so much tourism potential in Uganda. It's undoubted potential. In fact, I believe it was Winston Churchill who called Uganda the Pearl of Africa, with the source of the Nile, with the second largest freshwater body in the world, with about 50% of the population of mountain gorillas, and so much more. Who wouldn't call this the Pearl of Africa? So today, how can we make this pearl shine again amidst the COVID-19 pandemic? It's my privilege to invite our presenter, and we couldn't get anybody better than Mr. Amos Wekesa, founder and CEO of Great Lakes Safaris Limited and Uganda Lodges Limited. He comes from an inspiring and humble background that reflects the person he is today. He has been promoting Uganda for over 20 years, and he is a well-known advocate for social and economic development through tourism initiatives. He is frequently invited as a keynote speaker at international and national conferences and events on topics ranging from economic investment, sustainable tourism, entrepreneurship, and youth development. He currently sits as the chairman of the Presidential Investment Roundtable Tourism Technical Working Group. He has addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York on entrepreneurship for development, and has been featured on CNN's accredited and renowned African Voices. He was awarded a Titan Regional Award and Continental Award in Leisure and Tourism for his success in promoting local tourism in Uganda. Amos continues to be a leading consultant on all matters tourism and an ambassador not just for Great Lakes Safaris and Uganda Lodges, but for Uganda as a country. Ladies and gentlemen, Amos Wekesa to deliver the Castle Think piece. Amos, over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Gabriel. And it's also nice to see many of familiar faces online. You know, from Laura, seeing the Dr. Andoa we've met once, and UTB represented very well by Lillian. Now, I'm also very glad to be part of the castle. I'm so glad that I once studied at Oxid. I studied as an Oxid. And I think it's one of the best courses that I've ever encountered myself. And I think everybody listening out there should endeavor to be part or come and study to become an Oxid. It's a fantastic school. It prompts you to think, it prompts you to work hard, it prompts you to pursue your dream. And I think from the time I studied, from the time I did INT, my life has never been the same. I've engaged, I've pushed what my strength is, which is tourism. And I thank God that He's given me that opportunity to do so. So I'm told I have about 20 minutes to just go through what we think about as Castle in as far as tourism is concerned. Now, I will start out with an introduction. Like Gabriel said, a lot of Ugandans do not pretty much understand what tourism is all about. And we'll ask ourselves, who is a tourist? A tourist is a person not judged by color, height, or anything, that leaves place A, goes to place B, and spends over 24 hours and less than a year. And that person should not have a permanent residence in the place B that they are heading to. So if I left Kampala, I went to Gulu, and I spent over 24 hours and I don't have a permanent job in Gulu, I become a tourist. Now, where is the use of me becoming going to Gulu to the nation? If I get on a phone and I call Dr. Magara and say, Doctor, I am heading to Gulu, that money is attributed to tourism. I go to a petrol station and I take fuel in, say, Total or Shell, whichever, that money spent is attributed to tourism. If I have a mechanic or there's anything and I'm able to go to a garage and service that car before I leave, that money is attributed to tourism. I drive from Kampala, I stop at Kafu and I eat the world-best cassava. That money is attributed to tourism. If I reach Gulu, I sleep in a hotel. That hotel is employing people. There is food. If you look at just a single plate of single meal in a day, you'll find that there's so many people that have been impacted. Those who supply onions, tomatoes, whatever, that I have been able to use well at that time. So if I went to another restaurant to take anything else, I would be supporting the economy of tourism of Gulu. Now, tourism is such a very, very important aspect of our life. On 23rd of September last year, tourism became the second most important sector in the world. Unfortunately for us as Uganda, we had started out extremely very well. In 2016 May, the government of Uganda hired 3 PR firms. One was in the UK, another one in Germany, another in the US. These firms did a fantastic job in introducing Uganda to the international market. They brought a lot of media, they brought a lot of the international tour operators to Uganda who were able then to sell Uganda to the rest of the world. Now, from my definition, you realize that even me as a Ugandan, I travel, I become a tourist. Now, tourism has been thriving, of course, in Uganda. The challenge is that a lot of us think about tourism in terms of adventure. A lot of Ugandans have been traveling around Uganda. Companies like Travelnez have been taking people around the country. If you go, for example, even just for a barrio in Gulu, you are still a tourist because you'll be spending time there. If you go for business, you still become a tourist, a business tourist. Our focus has been our focus has been on international tourists when we think about adventure tourists. But the Ugandans are starting out and they're moving around the country for different reasons. And that's why they say that Ugandan tourism contributes about $1.6 billion to the economy. But if you add the indirect benefits of tourism, we're still above $2.5 billion as a country. When it comes to the worldwide tourism sector, like I said, it's the second most important sector in the world from 23rd of September last year. The whole world earns about $9 trillion from tourism every single year. Tourism employs about 10% of the employed population of the world, which is about 330 million people. According to what I read yesterday on WTTC, I'm told in the last 4 or 5 months, as a world, we've lost about $195 billion because of COVID. Now, before March, I think every tour company, every tourism business was expecting a boom. We all had inquiries. As Great Lakes Safaris, as a practitioner, I was thinking about hiring more people. And we had never had advanced bookings like we had at this particular time. And we went into a challenge. We went into a challenge of COVID, and tourism and insecurity, tourism and diseases don't coexist. For example, if you have Ebola, and now with COVID, every tourist cancelled pretty much for Uganda because the airport was closed. That's international tourists. The Ugandans were scared traveling across the country. Though they're starting to come back, we're seeing quite a number of Ugandans starting to travel across the country, which is a fantastic thing. Now, as a country, we have a few of the opportunities that we can take advantage of, like talking about the domestic tourism that is starting to look up. The challenges, of course, of domestic tourism is that a lot of Ugandans who have money intend to look at traveling outside the continent, travel outside the country to try and look for tourism experiences. But because of the opportunities that have been introduced by different players in the industry, reduction of costs into the national parks, we're seeing that change quite a lot. Now, for Uganda, like I said, we have earned about $1.6 billion in 2019. Uganda's tourism employs close to 700,000 people within the hotel sector, and about 900 in total. Of course, that does not include the Ugandans that are directly impacted by tourism, the people who supply foods, different items to different hotels. And you've seen that because of COVID, the hotels that were purchasing the matoke, the pineapples, and those kind of things have been affected directly because the farmers were such direct beneficiaries of this kind of the efforts of hotels and restaurants. Now, these challenges have been a lot. A lot of the tour operators in Uganda, for example, had not been prepared for the COVID challenge. Many of them savings, and I think as a country as well, we never had a proper preparation in advance and in making sure that we have got savings in our accounts. Now, of course, very few companies like ours that have been around for a longer time that have been dealing with challenges were able to deal with the challenge of COVID for now, because it did not find us with debt, not find us with the it did not find us with things that can be able to bring us down. Now, we, as we speak right now, the industry is going through very hard times, especially for the tourism bit, for the tour operators and hotel owners. Yesterday, I was speaking to the bankers, and they told me, one of the bank was telling me that the biggest beneficiaries of the loans from the banks have been hotel owners. And much as they've tried to give moratoriums, I think they call it, I don't know how they pronounce that, and waivers between April and this year and April next year, they still have a lot of hotels which are threatening to be closed down. They want to sell off some of the hotels. But that is not just affecting tourism, it's affecting direct individuals. A lot of them are saying that about 90% of the people that had borrowed from the banks are facing similar challenges. So COVID has in many ways been a challenge, but it's also helping us to understand that we need to be preparing better as a country, as a people, for these kind of challenges going forward. It's also given us a chance to think about diversification, because people like myself have only been in one sector, and that is tourism. As I speak right now, I've also put my mind into going for agro processing, and that will probably support me during the bad times of the bad times of the industry. Now, we've come up with the recommendations. Of course, our challenges as a country, like I said earlier on, we have not been having enough marketing as a country. According to World Bank, if Uganda had invested between $20 to $30 million a year, Uganda has the ability and the potential to earn $12 billion a year. As we speak right now, Uganda Tourism Board has access to about $26 billion, 26 billion shillings, and that also includes looking after its staff. We've been having challenges of quality employees. Uganda does not have a single institution that can be able to train Ugandans to compete for jobs at a much higher level. And as we speak right now, most of the top jobs in the country have been run by either South Africans or Kenyans or Indians. Now we're pushing the government of Uganda, of course, to make sure that Jinja Training School is transformed into a center of excellence to be able to train Ugandans to compete for the jobs. There has been a lot of improvement on infrastructure, especially roads leading to tourism related activities, but there are also areas that have not been improved. And a good example will be the areas of Bwindi, traveling all the way from Queen Elizabeth National Park to Bwindi to Kisoro. But I'm told that there is a plan to be able to improve that part of the world to improve the roads. Now, the other challenge that we have also had is probably the political class has not very much appreciated the value of tourism, and that's why we do not see many people discussing or engaging in tourism as far as Uganda is concerned. Of course, this will need us to make sure that we engage the political group to also come and invest and see direct benefits of the tourism industry in order to be able to support it. If you look at Kenya, for example, Kenya has got at least 30% of its members of parliament directly invested in the tourism industry. We've got a few guys in the parliament, for example, who have invested in hotels, but they have no idea that hotels and tourism are the same as far as we are concerned. We all know the potential of this country in as far as tourism is concerned. Gabriel has spoken about things that make us outstanding. Uganda is about 0.02% of the world total landmass. It has got 11% of the world's species of birds. It's got a big portion of the second freshwater lake in the world. We've got a very big diversity of culture. We've got 53.9% of the population of the mountain gorillas. We've got 10 national parks that are extremely very unique. We've got Mason Falls National Park, which is Africa's largest, Uganda's largest national park with about 5,000 square kilometers if you add the adjacent game reserves. You've got Mount Elgon, which hosts the world's largest caldera. You've got the Rwenzoris that are crossed by the equator but have snow on top. They're the largest block of mountains, 43 kilometers by 120 kilometers squared, which is a very big part of, it's like you drive from Kampala and beyond Jinja. That's how big it is, the Rwenzoris are. Now, if you look at Kilimanjaro, Kilimanjaro has the highest point of Africa, but Kilimanjaro makes about $300 million a year. And if you compare to Kilimanjaro to Mount Elgon, Kilimanjaro is a walking mountain. The Rwenzoris are a technical mountain, but also at the same time, you've got so many opportunities on this mountain that will be taken advantage of. If Kilimanjaro makes $300 million a year, their Rwenzoris would be able to make about $500 million if taken advantage of. Now, Kilimanjaro gets about 65,000 tourists a year. Uganda gets Mount Rwenzori gets about 4,000 tourists in there, including Ugandans. Now, that is not all. Of course, we got beautiful weather. Visa International does research on tourism and the reasons why people travel across the world every single year. And 36% of the people normally refer to weather as their best, the reason why they're traveling. And so if we took advantage, of course, as well of our weather, if we took advantage of 11% of the world's species of birds, which are found in Uganda, we would also be in a very good state. Now, as CASO, we've had some recommendations that the government of Uganda must take into account. So unfortunately, I've been having a problem with my internet here. I hope we're all getting what I'm trying to talk about. The first recommendation that I look at, of course, there was a list that all of us have seen, would be marketing. I think what we need is to be able to push for a proper marketing budget, such that the world comes to know about Uganda for a better reason. Today, if you travel outside Uganda, there are two things that Uganda is known for. One is Idi Amin. Actually, if we took advantage of Idi Amin's name and promoted it for the good, we'd probably have a lot of resources coming in. If you compare that to, say, how the Germans have used Hitler as an attraction. It's dark history, but it has an opportunity for us. The other thing that people a bit know about Uganda for is the gorillas. But the gorillas are very limited products. You have about 19 groups of trackable gorillas in Uganda, but those are only 8 people per group. So if you add that times, if 8 times 19 times 365 days, you have less than 70,000 gorillas a year. So you have that as a limited product. So every tourist that comes from out wants to see the mountain gorillas. Now, a country like Egypt receives about 1 million tourists in a month. Now, if we want to receive 1 million tourists in a month, we should be able to take advantage of what God has gifted Uganda. Uganda is Africa compressed. So if you look at the water bodies, if you look at the mountains, look at the forests, look at the different parts of the country, and all segmented properly, we'd be able to handle close to 1 million people per year. And that's something that we need to, but we also need to market it to the world. In marketing, if I don't know about if I don't know about you and I've never heard about you, then you don't exist. So our recommendation, I would still believe that if we push the government of Uganda to put in a budget of about between $12 million a year to about $20 million a year, would be able to collect between maybe $6 to $7 billion a year from tourism. Tourism infrastructure, that is very key for us in as far as, of course, the industry is concerned and the castle is concerned. There are particular roads, airstrips that need to be improved. If you go to a place like Ethiopia, you have got 22 airports that are tarmacked. Now, Uganda has got 1 airport that is tarmacked very well, I think, like Bernard Bombora will tell us, but we can improve many of the remaining ones. I know that Hoima is coming up, and that will be very good. We need to be able to train to make sure that tourism training school comes of age. For me, I think if those 3, in my opinion and opinion of Castle, if we improved first of all those 3 and make sure there's a good school, and that school is not just to focus on training Ugandans to compete for jobs locally, but it's also to train, to give Ugandans a chance to be able to compete for jobs outside Uganda. Now, Ugandans have a history that we were the best trained people in East and Central Africa until 1971 when Idi Amin took over power. During Idi Amin's time, those who were good left for Kenya and those others left for the rest of the world. They actually started dominating Kenya's tourism until 1975. The president of Kenya was so angry, Kenyatta at that time, he decided to build Utalii and he gave it to the Swiss. And the Swiss were given 10 years to be able to train good trainers who are Kenyans who took over in 1983. Now, that said, they train 100%. Kenya's got about 44 training institutions, but export 70%. So they export to the Middle East, the labor. They export to Uganda as a place. They also are taking on new advantages. They're realizing that in the world, in every cruise ship, you have got 1 Filipino. And each Filipino earns about $2,000 per month being on the cruise, and it takes about 6 months on to be on the cruise. That's $12,000 that a person would have. Now, what Kenya has done is gone and engaged those cruise ship owners to make sure that Kenyans are taken up for those jobs. Now, Uganda's population, which is growing very fast, would need this kind of jobs. We're training people in areas that do not have opportunities. Tourism, which has a lot of opportunities, has not had a very high-end training school that can make Ugandans compete. I would probably end there for now, but the truth is that the bigger document is here. We can read through it and be able to understand some of the opportunities and challenges that we can take advantage of.
Thank you very much, Amos, for sharing that think piece. And like Amos has said, this think piece is available. But what we're going to do is, from the discussion we are having this morning, we're going to beef that think piece up. So please don't be conservative with your views. Anything you have to say about tourism that you think we should be including in the think piece that we're going to share widely, please share it so that we benefit from your knowledge about the sector and how we can make this sector thrive. Amos has given us a background on where the sector was before COVID-19, where the sector was projected to go, what disruptions COVID-19 has brought in, but he still emphasized that there are still opportunities. We still have a chance to make things work for us. I'm very excited to see that the questions are already coming in. So if you have a question or a comment, please go to the Q&A tab that's most likely at the bottom of your screen, and let's hear what you have to say. We have a comment from, I believe this is Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University. His question came in first, and he says, there has been a lot of criticism about the lack of strategy in Uganda's tourism, despite the enormous potential presented by our rich biodiversity and culture. Doesn't COVID-19 present a unique opportunity to address this problem? So we're not going to focus on the dark cloud. Like the good professor has said, we're going to focus on the silver lining, the opportunities that COVID-19 has brought to the fore, even especially in the tourism sector. I'd like now to go to our first discussant. But just a reminder, if you are on Facebook or on Twitter, remember to use the hashtags CastleWebinar and Thrive Tourism. CastleWebinar and Thrive Tourism. We don't want to miss your question or your comment. So use those hashtags so that we can get your question or your comment. Also, if you'd like to comment and you're on Facebook or Twitter, just do it the ordinary way, the way it's done on Facebook and Twitter. Use the hashtag. We will get to your question as well. Our first discussant today is Ms. Lily Ajarova. She is a tourism expert and a passionate conservationist. She's currently serving as the Chief Executive Officer of Uganda Tourism Board, UTB. She's popularly referred to as Mama Chimp. And if you do not know her story with the chimps, please look for that story online. We may not have time to go into it today. Lily has been recognized for contributing to Uganda's economic development through tourism marketing and wildlife conservation and management. She has also provided leadership as a member on the advisory committee of Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, PASA, and this developed policies, standard operating procedures, and best practices for the 22 sanctuaries and wildlife centers in 13 African member countries of PASA. She's also a proud Rotarian, mother, mentor, and educator. She is a recipient of the prestigious National Golden Jubilee Award, Tourism Excellence Award, Wildlife Conservation Award, Top Africa 100 Women in Travel, Africa's Most Influential Women in Business and Government, among other accolades. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Uganda Tourism Board, Ms. Lily Ajarova. Welcome to have your discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Gabriel. Good morning, everyone. I would like to start by thanking CASO for inviting me to be on this webinar today. Lilia Jarova is my name, the CEO of Uganda Tourism Board. It's a great pleasure to share on the thoughts on tourism in Uganda with all of you. Thank you all, the participants, those who are participating in this. And thank you very much, Amos, for the background that you have provided. You have covered a lot of grounds with all the statistics and the opportunities, but also the challenges. And I will just pick on a few of the opportunities and the challenges and maybe some updates on what is happening in some of the areas. I will start with the impact of COVID. As Uganda Tourism Board, when we went into a lockdown, we set up, we commissioned a survey, which is ongoing, and it will continue until when, we have overcome this and things are all settled with COVID. And from the preliminary results, we have the report indicating that 97% of the bookings that the tour operators and the different players in the sector had for this calendar year 2020 were all cancelled. I mean, a few bookings came through in January and February, but even then already there were bookings that were being cancelled. So that gives us the impact that COVID is having on the tourism sector. And that also translates into $841 million that has already been lost. As much as the tour operators and the various operators are trying very much to convince their clients to reschedule their trips, there are those who have totally canceled their trips, and that translates to that value. And 89% of the operators have reported to have, for now, laid off their staff. Some of them have laid off their staff forever. Some of them are still in anticipation that in the next few months, if things get better, that they might be able to call back the staff to work when business restarts. What is happening is also that this has provided an opportunity to rethink our plan on the development of the sector, and also to it's providing us an opportunity to make sure that we position ourselves to be able to address the need of the market as far as tourism is concerned. One of the key things that we must appreciate is that the government of Uganda has done an amazing, amazing job to control the spread of COVID. And we are one of the top countries in Africa who are being appreciated for managing the pandemic very, very well. And from the tourism perspective and marketing, this gives us an opportunity to position ourselves as a safe destination. So as we communicate right now on market destination Uganda, the key message, the key opportunity we have is that it's a safe destination. For any tourist who is traveling across the world, safety definitely is very key. No one would just want to go and have their leisure time in a place which is unsafe. So that has provided us an opportunity that we need to take advantage of and make the best use of. And with this, Uganda Tourism Board, together with the private sector and Ministry of Tourism, we have been able to develop the standard operating procedure for the tourism sector, and this is for each and every one along the tourism value chain. These SOPs are available on our website, and you can be able to access them. But we have also, in addition to that, we have produced some materials, educational materials that especially the hospitality subsector are using to educate the public on social distancing and all the other guidelines that the Ministry of Health has provided us. And at this point, we have also applied to the World Tourism and Travel Council to be able to get a stamp that recognizes that Uganda is one of those safe destinations. It is a marketing, it's a marketing opportunity for us, so we are pursuing that to be able to make sure that we improve on the recognition of Uganda being a safe destination. And of course, we have planned for we have had some digital campaigns going on around this messaging, but also we are planning for some other major media campaigns about the safety of the destination Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. One of the main challenges that Amos talked about is about the marketing, the financing. One, I would like to point out that if we look at the history of the financing of the sector, it has been very low. We need to appreciate that over the years there has been improvement, but it's still very low, that we really need to have more financing for us to be able to develop this sector to the point that it reflects and gives results according to how the government of Uganda in the two key policy document of Vision 2040 National Development Plan. It was reflected in National Development Plan 1, 2, now 3 as well, that tourism is one of the 3 primary sectors that should be transforming the Uganda's economy. Investment has to be made if we have to have tourism play that role. So I want to agree with Amos on that. But also very key is to recognize the efforts that are in place and what is happening and what we are doing in trying to market destination Uganda. One of them is what Amos already mentioned, that there were 3 PR firm market destination representatives who were hired in the core markets, and we are looking at increasing this number. We had already increased the number from 3 to 6, and we are looking at increasing this further to 13. This would be the core international markets and emerging markets for Uganda as a tourism destination. If we are able to recruit the market destination representatives in the 13 source markets, we believe that will go a long way to improve on the international arrivals to Uganda. And maybe as well to point out that as we talk about marketing Uganda, we have in our marketing strategy, we have classified the markets into 4. We have the domestic market, that is the Ugandan market. We have the East African regional market, and we have the rest of Africa market, and then we have the international market. Now, we have different strategies that have been defined under each of the markets, and the strategies that we should be using to reach out to these markets. We are not ignoring the domestic market. We are not ignoring the regional markets within East Africa and the rest of Africa. They are equally as important as the international market. Very key as well to note is that with the marketing, things have also greatly changed with the digitalization of everything. All our operations are getting digitized, and so is marketing. So key is for Destination Uganda to also further make investment into digital marketing. We have presence on the digital platforms, but it's not adequate. And it is an area that as Uganda Tourism Board, we are going to be investing more in so that we can be able to compete favorably with the rest of the destinations. And important as well, as we digitize our marketing and make sure that we compete favorably, the content we still need to improve with the content that we are sharing in terms of videos, in terms of high quality photographs that we share on our digital platforms. And more investment and focus is being put on this, because you can only talk and talk so much to describe what Uganda is and the beauty of it. You can also write so much, but to be able to make sure that people really, you get to people's emotion, we need the photographs, we need the videos, and that is an opportunity of that we need to take advantage of. But now everything is going digital. If we can digitize our information and share, then we should be able to appeal better to the market to prefer Uganda as their destination for tourism. Okay. Important in marketing is also branding. As Uganda, we have our brand as Pearl of Africa, and it has been there, but there's no specific meaning and image to what Pearl of Africa is. And we look at this material time where we are standing right now to be the opportune time for us to review the brand Pearl of Africa. As Uganda Tourism Board, we have engaged a branding agency who are now working with us. And by end of year, we expect to have a brand manual, to have the Pearl of Africa brand redefined, meaning given to it, and with the image that you see that logo and you know that is what Destination Uganda stands for. And we will be able to roll this brand at the beginning of next year, January, around January, February 2021, and get every Ugandan excited about this. And I believe, we all believe that with this, it should make it a lot easier for us to be able to promote and market Destination Uganda, because this will distinguish us from our competitors, and it will also clarify what Uganda stands for, what our offers are. Okay. And it will also make it easy for the rest of the world to be able to recognize brand Uganda.
Lily, I hope you're drawing to a close.
Yes, I would just like to conclude with one key other opportunity that we have. In terms, Amos talked about product diversification, increasing our product range. One of the new products that we have, that we are offering now, is MICE. MICE is meeting, incentives, conferences, and events. And we have developed a 5-year strategic plan for maize. And the maize, the Uganda Convention Bureau that manages the maize as a product is sitting in Uganda Tourism Board. And this year, no, in the last few years, Uganda has been ranked in the position of 10th, one of the 10th best destination for maize. We are glad to know that by establishing the Uganda Convention Bureau, last year, 2019, Uganda has been able to push forward and hosted many more international meetings and conferences and events. And so 2019, we were ranked the best sixth on the continent. And this is another huge opportunity that as Uganda Tourism Board, as the sector, we are working around to make sure that we make the best use of this opportunity that we have with the maize product. Thank you very much. I'm available to have more discussion. There's so much to talk about tourism, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you are available for more discussion, and actually the participants, the attendees, are engaging with us via the Q&A tab at the bottom of our screens. There are many questions there. I'd like to encourage our panelists to all visit that and respond to the questions. Mr. Wekesa, there are a number of questions there, particularly for you. Lily, one attendee says we haven't exploited our potential in plants. Just showing the world what plants Uganda has and the benefits from those plants. Hopefully you can respond to that attendee to let him know what the tourism board, Uganda Tourism Board, is doing about that blessing that God has given us as well. Would like now to get your opinion in relation to something in the sector. So I'd like to ask the technical team to put up our first poll question. We'll just use a minute or so to respond to this question. I just remind the panelists that you cannot take the poll. So we'll only wait to see the results from what the attendees are saying in this poll question. So technical team, please go right ahead and post the poll question. All right, there it is. Which of these tourist attractions have you ever visited in Uganda? Which of these tourist attractions have you ever visited in Uganda? Oh, I was also attempting to pick. Unfortunately, I cannot pick, but let's see what many of us are saying. The options we have, the Uganda Museum, the Kasubi Tombs, a national park, so any national park, Uganda Wildlife Education Center, that's the zoo, an art gallery, a crater lake, and none of the above. So far, we don't have anybody saying none of the above. However, we also don't have anybody saying that they visited the Kasubi Tombs, which are just here in Kasubi, not too far from many of us that either live in the city or come to the city. So, okay, now we have some people who visited the Kasubi Tombs, but I'm glad to see that none of the attendees says they have not visited any of these. I'll just allow a few more seconds. Majority say they visited a national park. Art galleries, well, probably we have to do more about, or information about art galleries. Okay, I think we can end the poll at this point. So 53% of us say we visited a national park, and the list, we have 3% for 2 Kasubi Tombs and an art gallery. Thank you very much. We will have another poll question in a few minutes. I'd like now to move on to our next discussant, who is Captain Tony Rubombora. He is the founder of Ego Air Limited. He founded it in 1994 and has been its CEO from the inception to date, which has been about 26 years, I beg your pardon. He has served as a teacher, instructor at East African Civil Aviation Academy. He has served as an airline pilot to a level of air transport pilot license with carriers including Uganda Airlines, Sierra Leone Airlines, Mombasa Air Services, Tanzania Aviation Services. Then he commenced with Ego Air Limited in 1994. Ego Air Limited has grown to employ 60 staff, own a growing fleet of aircraft, and own a state-of-the-art aircraft maintenance facility. Ego Air obtained the following accreditation: ISO 9001-2015, Quality Management System certification, approval as a humanitarian air operator with the World Food Programme, WFP, and approval as an oil and gas service provider for Total E&P. He's also currently a board member, Uganda Petroleum Institute, Chigumba. He's a member of the Board of Trustees, Vine Academy. He's a chairman, Shalom Forex Bureau, chairman, Bethel Estates Limited, and associate member of the Chartered Institute of Transport, I beg your pardon, UK, and formerly a board member of Uganda Air Cargo. He's an alumnus of East African Civil Aviation Academy, Caribbean Aviation Training Institute in Trinidad, and Flight Safety School in France. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Tony Luombora. Over to you, Captain.
Good morning again, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, Captain.
I would like to start by thanking all the panelists and all our guests who tuned in, and also to express my interest in participating in the tourism industry, and also to thank Amos for his elaborate presentation. I would also like to say that, like Amos, I'm also an Oxide, probably the first group, and that did help shape my future, not only in aviation transport, but also as a good citizen in this country. I'm not so much a specialist in tourism as in travel or transport, and to be specific in air transport. Therefore, I will outline the relationship between air transport and tourism. The first few points I would like to point out is that air transport is not an end in itself. And most people travel by air in order to achieve another purpose. And for that reason, many tourists in the world move from place to place in the shortest way by air transport. That way, air transport has become dependent on tourists and tourism. And also tourism dependent on air transport. With the global connectivity as it is today with the social media and internet, people are able to see what is at the far end of the world and get there in the shortest time by air. So air transport is very important to tourism. Air transport and aviation general is a very highly sophisticated and expensive industry. And it is also one of the most regulated industries in the world. Now, some facts about air transport is that transport has an inherent limitation of requiring high capital input and low profitability. And as we stand at the end of 2019, air transport accounted for slightly over $8 billion, which is about 10% of the tourist industry. And most of the movement of personnel has been carried out by legacy airlines. That is about 75%. Now, most of the legacy airlines are also supported by their states, or they were initiated and supported by their states. Although some very prominent ones are private. Now, having said that, when COVID-19 appeared 5-6 months ago, it signaled a big blow to the aviation industry, probably the biggest in the history of the aviation industry. And we ended up with a situation where nearly 10,000 airliners, on average costing $150 to $300 million a piece, being grounded. And that being grounded left the industry in a very bad state. Now, the air transport industry is related to tourism, but is also related to the banking industry, because banks are the ones which fund the air transport. Now, when the airlines go down, the banks will be affected equally. It is believed, it is estimated that the reduction in turnover in the last 5 months has worked out to about 30% at this stage. Now, the critical part of the air transport which affects Uganda is the source of our tourists, which is from North America, Britain, Europe, and the Middle East. And what we have seen in those countries, because they are first world countries, they are developed, is that their countries have kicked in very fast to prop up the airlines so that they do not collapse. And that has helped maintain continuity for those airlines. Whereas in the rest of the world, it is not clear how many countries, especially in the third world countries, are able to bail out airlines or support them in face of such a big crisis. In Africa, we only have Africa contributing about under 3% of all the air transport movement in the world. But as you are all fully aware, about all the key airlines, apart from one or two, are making losses, from South African Airways, Kenya Airways, Air Rwanda, and Ethiopian. Only Ethiopian had registered a profit, but with the COVID-19, it's unlikely that they will make a profit. Now, Why am I saying all this? I say this because if we have good connectivity, you will get your tourists coming in comfortably. But without good connectivity, it will be difficult for Uganda to get tourists. Most tourists will probably then choose to take regional destinations like in Europe, within intra-Europe travel, and also in the US, that tourists will choose local destinations instead of coming to Africa. The good side about connectivity is in Uganda, the international airlines which bring in tourists like Emirates, like Qatar, KLM, Air France, and so forth, have all been propped up by their governments. Generally, the European governments have pumped in close to $20 billion in keeping the airlines afloat. In spite of all this, there have been many job losses. And as at the end of it all, we know that where there are job losses, there is little disposable income, which disposable income is what is really used to enable people take out tourist packages and come to destinations like Uganda.
Right.
It is currently estimated that the first world economies, starting from Europe, America, will contract by anywhere between 1% and 9% of their GDPs. Even China, which has been having high growth rates, is only expected to generate 1% growth in GDP. All these will have an impact on the number of people who can find their way to Uganda. Now, that hurdle is one. The second hurdle is the fact that in existence of COVID-19, people will still be scared of traveling, and particularly traveling by mass transport, by air. And therefore, we estimate that the industry will take approximately 2 to 3 years to come back to the level it was in 2019. And therefore, probably growth will start in the year 2024 or 2025. Now, on the local scene, tourism contributes on the domestic scene. Tourism contributes approximately 20 to 30% of all the local movement by air in the country. And that will be affected as long as the arrivals have reduced. But there is a good sign because the government of Uganda has invested in Uganda Airlines, which is a good thing. Uganda Airlines, if it does get its wide bodies for long-haul transport, which is estimated to come in end of this year in December, with the arrival of the Airbuses, I think there's a real opportunity there that Uganda Airlines could ferry in tourists at good packages at reduced rates to be able to prop up the tourist industry of Uganda. That is assuming that we have will have been able to overcome the COVID restrictions by that time. I would like to overly emphasize. I don't want to overly emphasize the points that have been raised by Lillian and Amos. Uganda is a very gifted tourist destination, but I feel that we have an opportunity at this time when the arrivals are few to do a few things. One is to reflect and to see to it that the government reviews the policies and deals with the infrastructure which is required, so that at the time that recovery does take place, there will be an opportunity to have good tourists. Now, what is the critical bit of the infrastructure I'm talking about is that if there is a recession in the first world, the kind of travelers who will be coming to Uganda are the upper and high class tourists, because they are the people who have the disposable income. And such people will come to a destination where the standard of the hotels, the standard of air transport is good. And for that reason, I think this is the right time to ensure that the infrastructure is looked at during this period of 2 years before the time passes. Now, we have only...
Captain, you need to bring your presentation to a close.
Yes, I'm coming. I'm on the recommendations now. I would like to really urge government to look at putting up tar airstrips in strategic tourist destinations. This is because the high class kind of travelers will want to fly in by air. They may not want to spend 5-6 hours on the road. But we only have 3 hard surface airfields in this country. I know Kabale is coming up, but most of our prime tourist destinations do not have hard surface airfields. So I would advocate for that. I would also like to suggest that with the arrival of Uganda Airlines on long haul, there is need to invest more into marketing Uganda now, so that when Uganda Airlines starts operating long haul flights to Europe, they will have enough passengers to keep it sustained and also to feed our market directly, just like the Kenyans are doing with Kenya Airways. I would also like to encourage local tourism. Local tourism is quite important, and regional tourism is equally important. I don't see why a person from Dar es Salaam should not visit Mbale, or a person from Nairobi to visit Fort Portal, or a Ugandan to go and visit Kilimanjaro. And I think that is a very viable option, so that we have our own local tourism in Africa. I would also like to see more of virtual tourism being used as a tool to attract more people to know about Uganda, so that they can come in and visit Uganda. Okay. I'd like to thank all of you, and I'll come to an end and say that we in aviation, it's very complicated, it's highly regulated, but we are committed to supporting the tourist industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain. Amos did ask a question around, how many tar, surfaces we have, airports, airlines, and airstrips, but probably you will respond to that later on when we're having the Q&A. But also you've touched on things that some of the attendees have asked. We have somebody from Johannesburg who has talked about the opportunities in virtual tourism, and hopefully our special guest can take note of that. Lily from Uganda Tourism Board can take note of that. You also, there are many other aspects you spoke about, but our panelists, please visit the Q&A. There are a number of questions there, and our attendees would like to get more information on a number of things, would like to pick your brains on a number of things, you being experts in the sector. I'd like now very quickly to invite our next discussant, Ms. Laura Kagame. Laura Butamuliza Kagame is a 36-year-old travelpreneur. She is the managing director of Travoneza Holiday and Travoneza Hotels. Travoneza Holidays are an experiential travel company whose aim is to demystify travel for Ugandans by making it more affordable, convenient, accessible, and generally more exciting. Travoneza Hotels manages and owns hotels and lodges in Uganda, as well as consultancy for experiential hospitality. Many of our panelists have spoken about local tourism, and many questions about local tourism are also coming up. So, Laura, I hope you are ready. Laura has also served in the tourism industry for about 13 years, starting off in a travel agency in Johannesburg, to heading sales in Rwanda Air, and eventually starting Travoneza in 2016. She holds a bachelor's degree in tourism management from Midrand, graduate in Johannesburg, and an MBA in tourism development at Stanford University in Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Laura Kagame. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. For being with this. I'm usually very vocal about domestic tourism, so this is exciting for me. And thank you very much, Amos and Lily, for all the statistics and highlighting all the challenges and opportunities as well. So I will not focus too much on the challenges and everything we've had to face, because that has been highlighted a lot. And I believe throughout this COVID period, we have talked about these challenges a lot. We all know what we've had to go through, how we've had to lay off staff and how we've had to shut down for a while. But what I want to discuss mainly is domestic tourism, because I believe inbound and basically foreigners coming in and all that has been discussed extensively by Amos and the rest. So my discussion on domestic tourism is basically, I just want to highlight a few things. I'm one of the people that believes that you don't have to, I know there's a lot of investment involved, required, but there's also a lot of things that can actually be worked on right now that don't require huge budgets. And that's what I want to tackle. Just a couple of things that will speak to the Ugandan market. So I want to talk about, basically, I'll give an example. When the lockdown was lifted, maybe our first trip was end of the first weekend of end of June, actually, about 26th June. And we had a whole bus of tourists of Ugandan travelers going to Fort Portal, and then the next weekend, and all the weekends up to this last one, where we had about 60 people going to Bunyonyi in Kabale. And so I get so many questions, but Laura, how are you doing it? How is Travoneza doing it? Everyone is talking about, travel companies not doing well, and, everything. And I think, not that I think, I know that what enabled us to quickly get back on board or jumpstart tourism, like we've been saying, hashtag jumpstarting domestic tourism, domestic travel, is because we have been speaking to the Ugandan traveler all along. Before COVID, we did a lot of outbound travel. And I always used to engage UTB and all the the players in the industry about how whenever we try to quote, let's say, a Mombasa package, and then also a Chobe package or just any other Ugandan destination, the difference would be so little. And people always prefer to travel to Dubai and to Mombasa and to Cape Town and all these places. We tried, and we did quite a number, especially team buildings and group travel around Uganda, but ended up doing a lot of outbound being out of Uganda, not by choice, but it's because of the market. So when all this happened, we just continued to speak to Ugandans. We have always spoken to Ugandans. We understand the Ugandan market. So it was very easy for them to jump on board. I'll talk about a couple of things that enable this, and that is information. So when all this happened, post-lockdown, I started to move around Uganda a lot, and that was because I wanted to show people. I find that people relate a lot with places when I'm literally standing in a place and saying, look, you can actually sleep here, you can do this, you can get here by only spending 450,000, which you can pay over a period of time. And this is what you'll get to do. You can swing from here to there, go on a boat. You know, I'm always throwing myself all over these places to show people that it's possible. And the number of questions I've been getting have really shown us how there's just information, basically coming, it's not UTB, government, tour operators are just not doing a very good job in communicating a lot of these, basically a lot of information about these places. So many people, for example, would not know how much it is for a child to enter the parks, how there are certain vehicles that are not allowed to enter the parks, you know, information like that. There's just so much that people don't know. And then when we started to give this information, and that's why I say what we're trying to do is demystify travel, to make your typical Ugandan realize that it's so easy to go to the parks. It's so easy to go to Sese Islands. It's so easy to go to these places. And when, you know, our trips really break it down for people and then package it all together for them, making it easier. Then there's accessibility. Well, with accessibility, let's put it this way. Many people will want to visit Kidepo, will want to visit, to go to Bwindi, will want to go to Maxton Falls National Park. But then when they start asking themselves these questions, you know, I drive a Vitz, how am I going to get there? I'm not comfortable driving on a highway, and it's especially for ladies, because I get this a lot from the ladies. Me and my friends want to go to a national park, but then we can't drive. I mean, we can't drive on a highway, or we drive a little Corsa. What can we do? And so that is when we came up with a weekend group trip. So where people just book into a group and then go in comfortable buses to these places. And then we made it more accessible for them like this, you know, more accessible for information, transport, all this stuff. And that's why they started to get on board. So we were just solving their problems one by one. That's what I mean by talking to the actual domestic traveler. And then relatability. So relatability, I've had this discussion with UTB quite a bit. I'm not a fan of sending celebrities to the parks and things like that as a brand ambassador, or talking about how Will Smith went where and then Kanye West went where. How is that going to make that secondary school teacher have the, you know, get out of his house and be like, I'm also going to Chobe? How? It's not, because that is just so beyond him that it's like when you're watching a movie and it's just so way out of reach, right? So when we started to show that average Ugandans were traveling, that me, a person who's not rich, who is not, you know, basically average Ugandans were traveling to these places and were only paying a certain amount of money. So it's like Miss Nalugembe, working in Centenary in the admin department, actually went with her husband and 2 children to this place. And then that's how you end up, you know, that is speaking to the majority of Ugandans, which I feel like we're not really doing, or we were not doing. So that's also how we end up getting volumes. Then creativity. You see, your typical Ugandan is not going to be super wowed by seeing an antelope, or super wowed by seeing a zebra. I mean, compared to a New Yorker. So basically, there has to be a lot more. There has to be a lot more. You have to create stuff for them to do in the evening. So because a lot of places don't do this, my team and I always have to, we go with these groups and then we'll create pottery sessions, we'll create, I don't know, what competitions. I mean, but we're very experiential. So it's even on the way there, we'll stop in different places. So recently we had a trip to Sese Islands and to Kalangala and staying at Provide. But basically, many people were like, they had never seen a Sese Island trip like that. Very many people, including the hotel owners in Sese, did not know that that there was a zoo. And so watching our group going to the zoo, when you get there, what do you do? Do you need hiking boots? Do you need, and this is all the information that we had told our people. And many times we leave something like a surprise element to it because many will be like, oh, I'm not a hiker, oh, I'm not this. But those are the ones that actually get to enjoy it even when they get there. So that creativity that I'm talking about has been lacking a lot because many of the tour operators have been focusing on that New Yorker that wants to come in and has just been dying to see what they're watching in Augusta. You know, for them, they will pay in. Just think to a lot of exactly what that's basically all they need. So many tour operators didn't know how to speak a different language, how to speak to the Ugandan traveler. Now, and then just adding value, you know, adding value to this package. It's just a lot more you can do to make someone feel like it's worth it to pay that amount of money to go to these places. So when someone says something is too expensive, sometimes it's not that they can't afford, it's just that they don't see the value in that product. And we're not, the majority of us in the industry are not really, you know, putting in effort to our travel packages for the Ugandan traveler. Basically, I'll talk about recommendations, right? What I would recommend going forward. It is basically, I'd like to talk about communication, communication that UTB could do that is more informative, more relatable, and less generic advertising. So as I've been moving around lately, I notice a lot, and I'll notice big billboards of, let's say, a gorilla and saying visit Quinty, but usually by the time you're looking at that, you're already there and you're not giving me that much information. I've been thinking about how, you know, we could have little stops, like little signs on the way saying you are 10 meters away from Sezibo Falls, you can just enter, and, you know, things like that. Basically more information on tourism destinations, more relatable. Like I said, we would rather see so-and-so who works in this place, like an average Ugandan going to these places, as opposed to, you know, taking celebrities all over the place. Something else that I find very important is just experientials at these tourism destinations. Last year and before, I traveled quite a bit elsewhere, and one of the places that really impressed me was Bali in Indonesia, because they just have so many, they've created so many, I'll call them vantage spots, points where you can, that make you want to stop and take pictures. So like either a lovely nest for you to take a picture in, something that says I love Bali, something that says I love, so you notice how everyone stops at the equator to take a picture. It's because there's something there for them to take that picture. So I went to Maxon Falls recently, and the top of the falls, and there's not even, they're very ugly, broken benches. There's nowhere to sit. There's nothing that makes you want to take a picture and circulate it. Or when you do take pictures, it will just drown in because there's no significant image that will become trendy. If the government, if we focused on domestic travel, then every single domestic traveler would become a mouthpiece, and then would end up even maybe not having to spend that much on advertising and things like that, because we would all, and with social media, the ripple effect is very huge. So we would end up everyone would be talking about Ugandan destinations and pictures and you know, places, you know, things that you can are very easily recognizable because of these significant experiential things that we can put at these different points. I really believe in the ripple effect of domestic tourism. I witnessed it in South Africa when I lived there. They started a short-left campaign. Short-left is like Masao. Now, Masao, you know, like trying to tell South Africans that travel is it's just there. It's just one stop. And it really worked. So now, even when you go to a lot of South African destinations, of course, I don't mean now, but when you go to a lot of South African destinations, it is 3/4 is South Africans themselves. You know, even in the expensive ones like Sun City, it is South Africans mostly. And then the foreigners make up the rest of it. So because of that, they're taking pictures, they're talking on social media, and it makes South Africa more, it puts it out there on the market. Same thing in Kenya. There are more Kenyans. When you go to any of the resorts in Mombasa, Diani, there are more Kenyans there than there are foreigners. And this is because their government, their tourism bodies are actually speaking the language of the Kenyans. They're actually marketing to the Kenyans themselves, and so they become, you know, proud of their places and everything. So also encouraging alternate tourism tours. So for example, instead of sending the tourism ambassadors to the national parks, which everyone already knows. Everyone already knows, you know, about the game parks. What if we send them on a culinary tour somewhere, or marine tour, you know, the islands, the boats, or birding? You know, basically, if we see Eddie Kenzo looking at birds and he's actually mentioning the types, or there's someone showing him the types, then, you know, things like that. I mean, if we're to use celebrities. And then, or historical tourism. So someone mentioned Idi Amin earlier, and the last time I was in Murchison Falls, I went to Pakuba. Pakuba is one of their game lodges. And next to it, the original Pakuba was actually bombed, and the ruins are there, and it's actually very scenic. It was bombed because they believed that Idi Amin was hiding there. Of course, I stand to be corrected, but that's what I was told by the guide. And so, I mean, those ruins, that is something that would be fascinating. So I asked the guide if he had ever taken anyone there, or if it's part of his itinerary, and he said no. He just points at it sometimes, and I had never heard of it. Whenever I go to all these places and I realize that I've never heard of something, I always go like, so if I don't know, then what about that lady sitting in admin working, you know, in a bank? How is she going to know these places? So I just believe we need to put a lot more effort, diversify our thinking, and not focus too much on the game lodges and everything. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but just to supplement it. And then in conclusion, I would like to say that to make it, you know, for sustainability purposes and that ripple effect that I talked about, if we could actually give as much attention to domestic travel, or speak to the domestic traveler, then we wouldn't, you know, the tourism industry wouldn't completely shut down every time there's a problem, you know. If we had been speaking to the domestic traveler more, we wouldn't be, a lot of the lodges wouldn't be suffering as much now. I mean, there are quite a number of lodges that have now started advertising rates for Ugandans, and everyone's just rolling their eyes like, oh, now you remember us, you know, that kind of thing. But if it had been a different, if communication had been different before, if Ugandans also felt included in this, and not like, oh, you know, travel is for the Muzungu. So when I say Travelers aims to demystify travel, that's what I mean. Like that, I'm always arguing with people online about that. I would really, really love to change that perception. Basically, I think that's about it, about domestic travel. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you very much. That's it for now. There are definitely going to be many questions. So please stay logged in, and please visit the Q&A. You've successfully reminded me of so many of my experiences around the country. of course, Pakuba, and the story I received was slightly different from yours. So probably our tour guides need to harmonize that story. But yes, it was exciting to see that that lodge and the bombed one. And yeah, from looking at it, you can tell nobody goes there. In fact, the only route to it is a very simple footpath, and it seems to go around, not even into. But yes, you've really gotten me excited. But before we go any further, I need to invite our special guest. Before we do that, can we respond to another poll question? So let's respond to our second poll question. Technical team, could you please put that up? There you go. In your opinion, what has been the greatest hindrance to domestic tourism in Uganda? Cost of accommodation at the tourist destination. Somebody picked that out very quickly. All right. So the options are cost of travel to tourist destinations, limited information on available tourism options in the country, cost of accommodation at the tourist destinations, and preference for tourist destinations abroad: Nairobi National Park, Serengeti National Park, Dubai, South Africa, etc. You notice that Laura's discussion has given you some of the answers to this one. But yes, please pick the option that applies most to you. In your opinion, what has been the greatest hindrance to domestic tourism in Uganda? Majority of us, that's about 44%, are saying limited information on available tourism options in the country. Wow, we have many people actually responding to this one. Excellent. So let's just give a few more seconds before we end this particular poll. All right, let's end it at this point. So 43% of us have said limited information on available tourism options in the country. So information is key. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's now great pleasure for me to invite and introduce our special guest for today's webinar. He is Mr. Vivian Liazi. He is the Assistant Commissioner, Tourism at the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities. In his current role, he leads the development of tourism regulation and quality assurance management of the tourism value chain. During the current COVID-19 pandemic, he leads the Tourism Inter-Sectoral Response Committee on quality assurance in the sector. He has 18 years experience in the tourism public sector. He is currently Assistant Commissioner for Tourism in the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquity, and he is in charge of quality assurance. He also serves as the official spokesperson of the ministry. He has accumulated experience in policy and project management of various tourism projects and played a key role in event coordination and management of major national and international events and marketing programs. He has served as project manager on the UNDP projects of improving policies and regulation in the tourism sector, the strengthening business tourism ecosystems, and greening tourism regulations supported by United Nations Environment Programme UNEP. He has also served as a board member of the Uganda Tourism Board. He holds a master's degree in economic policy and planning and a bachelor's degree in commerce. Mr. Liazi, our special guest of this webinar, you are very welcome to speak to the topic.
Yes, thank you so much, moderator, and thank you, Castle Think Tank One, for inviting me to be part of this very interesting discussion. In a special way, I also recognize the fellow panelists with whom we've worked quite a number of years through this journey, talking about tourism and improving tourism in one way or another. The times we're dealing with are special in a way. We are dealing with the COVID pandemic, and somebody related it to be like a Congolese song. You know, it moves on, and when you think it's about to end, it begins all over again. So it creates a sense of uncertainty in as far as what best strategy we need to use in addressing or looking at the recovery of tourism. The second problem with the pandemic that we're dealing with is it pits lives and livelihood in a very difficult corner. In order to mitigate and address the issues of life, saving life, you need to impact on the livelihoods of people, restricting their movement, asking them to take on a different social code, like do not greet, put on facial masks, and so on and so forth. And that doesn't tally very well with tourism, as you know. People like to move, or people should move around in order to experience the country. And that therein lies one of the greatest problems that has impacted tourism. Of course, tourism is also a highly linked factor or sector for that matter. And the fact that tourism has been constrained, the ripple effect has affected much of the economy in one way or another. Amos did talk about the pineapples that are being sold so cheaply around. It's mainly because travel is restricted. The export market has collapsed and people are not consuming them as much as they did in the hotels and so on and so forth. So that is a very big problem. Indeed, we are looking at a probable loss of almost 1 million visitors that we did expect this year. That is if things improve in the next few months. If they don't, it will even be worse. I'm talking of having received 1.6 million visitors last year. We will probably be lucky if we do 500,000 this year. And you can imagine the impact that will have on the economy and everything moving forward. Now, of course, a lot is being done in addressing the COVID pandemic, but what can we do and how do we look at the forecast of redressing ourselves post-pandemic? I think it will be a structured recovery. We may have to begin inwards, and Laura has well articulated with passion the need to focus on domestic tourism, because much of the world is locked out. If we are to recover anything, domestic tourism is going to be our first point of call. The second one, of course, moves into the East African market, who are regional neighbors, and indeed they contribute over 60% of the arrivals we have in this country. So we will have to focus on them as well in the strategy moving forward. And of course, we need to go global, because that is where much of the foreign exchange that we so much yearn for comes from. I want to focus my commentary on some of the recommendations that were brought up by Amos. Ably, he did articulate the landscape of tourism, where it is now, the opportunities and challenges that we're dealing with, and of course offered some of the recommendations of us moving forward. I think all these are correct in a way, and we just need to articulate and maybe throw a little more light on what government is doing and what we should be doing in addressing some of these problems. I will begin with the issue of standard operating procedures. Of course, if we are to recover from this pandemic, we definitely need to assure the traveling public that we are safe and secure destination. We've done a lot in that regard. We've come up with standard operating procedures for the hospitality industry and also for the tourism industry. And I think Madame Lily did articulate that quite well. And we are also looking at taking these forward for accreditation, especially with the WTTC, to give global assurance that we are on the right track in as far as safety and health is concerned. Of course, the development is one aspect of that implementation, but one, we need to move into the accreditation process, not only at the international level, but also at the local level. We are in current discussions and arrangements, especially with the Uganda Tourism Board, to ensure that even the enterprises have a COVID certification or compliance certification that will give the public some assurance that the people we are dealing with or the places we want to visit are indeed well secured in that regard. The second bit is monitoring. Of course, we need to expand on the monitoring of these enterprises to ensure that everyone is fitted, and the sensitization. Sensitization is so critical at the enterprise level, but also the public level. We should, as the general public, we should, as the visitors, demand that these enterprises offer services that comply with the mitigation measures that we need to put in place. We did talk about domestic tourism, and I want to focus a little bit on domestic tourism and what strategies we need to undertake to focus and build the domestic tourism market. Domestic tourism, as Laura put it rightly, trained by affordability, and of course, what interesting places in the country that we need to visit. Originally, tourism grew as a foreign exercise or enterprise. It was targeting the foreign visitor. So you'll find that in many of the tourism hotspots, the accommodation enterprises built around focusing. I think they need now to realize to diversify and expand more by agreeing to flexible packages, but also we need to invite more people to invest in affordable accommodation. The Uganda Wildlife Authority has come up with dormitories, camping options, and has given more concessions to the domestic or local enterprises to build more affordable accommodation in these places. The second one is transportation. Transportation is a big challenge, and I love the way Laura put it. If you have your small Corsa, it is tricky to go into the parks because these are rugged places and a bit far off and may not accommodate as many people as possible. The Uganda Wildlife Authority acquired certain buses, about 5 of them, to support in this, but also the mindset is changing. New enterprises focusing on domestic tourism are repackaging and finding interesting ways of taking more people into the parks. We thank government for having worked on the roads. I think virtually now, anywhere in the country, you can move on tarmac, right up to Karamoja, right up to Arua, right up to Chigezi, anywhere you can move on tarmac. The boats have also been improved. There are ferries that ply the route to Kalangala. The most recent one is Siguru, going to Dorwe Islands. So really a lot is being done in that area. But the more important thing that we need to address is mindset change. People need to look at tourism not as a foreign activity, not as a leisurely activity, but as a refreshing activity. You need to go around the country, enjoy the country, but also contribute in a way to redistributing the wealth that you have acquired to the local communities that are there. That way, will be more sustainable when you buy a few bunches of matoke on your way to the village, on your way to these tourism sets of attraction. We tried the Tulamble project, and I think it has been quite successful in broadening this awareness. In the Tulamble project, we used quite a number of tools. One was the influencer campaign. Laura was a bit cagey about that one. I think it is important for the market that it serves, but also focusing on the common person, telling that common person that it is okay to move around the country and it is cheap and affordable. I think we'll even improve more, especially with the Tourism Board on packaging and spreading this information to the Ugandans. Let's talk a little bit about the issue of branding and marketing. Of course, expanding our marketing effort is at the core of our recovery and also growth as the tourism sector. You've been informed, and Lydia, I think, put this out very well, that the budgets of tourism
Mr. Liazi, did we lose you?
Have perennially been low, but they are improving. The Ministry of Finance is allocated. Building that brand power is going to be one of the key things we need to do. Core branding, making sure that people are aware and associate with the brand. Those are the strategies that we're pushing through. If people love the brand, then they can spread the brand around. You've seen this with many of the famous destinations. I think let's use South Africa as one of the examples. It does resonate with everyone. as they are selling that particular brand. Amos did talk about the issue of political engagement. And I think this is very important, especially now that we are moving into a new political phase. We're going into the elections, and probably early next year we'll have a new political crowd. Those who have been following the political space in the country will know that probably 60% or even more of the new political leaders will be new. Many are going to be dropped off, unfortunately. So those are the people we've been engaging with, trying to sell the issue of tourism. We need to do it afresh as the new year comes on board, as new leaders come on board, to align ourselves to the political agenda that is moving on with the new cycle of leadership. But I think the other important thing is interest the political leaders to invest in tourism. That is very important in seeking or soliciting their support. Right now, you can see quite a number of our political leaders have taken some interest in investing in tourism. I think I can pull out the Right Honorable Speaker has invested in the hotel industry. And when she talks about tourism, she does talk about it very passionately. We need a front seat on the table in order to articulate and push the case for tourism a little forward. We also talked about the issue of fast-tracking the East African vision, community vision. We share many of the attractions we have in this country with our neighbors in Tanzania, in Kenya, and so on and so forth, and Rwanda. We have the gorillas, we have the lions, they are the same. So marketing them as a common entity takes us a little further. And also those visitors who come from the long haul, somebody coming from the United States or coming from Asia, does take the opportunity of visiting several of these destinations when that opportunity arises. You wouldn't like to come to Uganda, then arrange another date or another point in time to come to Kenya. We've worked on the single visa facilitation to make that possible. We've worked on electronic visa application processes. We've worked on a common grading and classification program so that all the facilities are comparable in grade. We've worked on a common marketing strategy where we move as one group, as one region to market, but also the intra-marketing promotion to make sure that the East Africans or Kenyans come to Uganda, Ugandans visit Rwanda, Rwandese also come to Uganda, and that kind of thing will help us tap and grow the tourism sector more. Captain Rubombora has been at this game of promoting the air industry for quite some time, and is very passionate about the promotion of the airspace. One of the problems we have as Uganda, we're a landlocked country, so much of the access into this country will definitely be by air. And improving the infrastructure at the airport, having more airports, having more hard surface spaces for landing is going to take us a little further. We have made some improvements in this area. I think it is now possible to fly into the parks from the neighboring country directly without going to Entebbe. The new airport coming in Kabale is a very welcome addition that we need to champion. But the improvements at the airport also are helping a lot in improving accessibility. The coming in play of the Uganda Airlines, improving on the connectivity. But I think more importantly, if we improve the infrastructure at the airport so that Uganda becomes more of a hub, it will help a lot. The focus on domestic aviation, I think, is very important, and Bwana Rubombora has been at the forefront of this development. I think the cost of getting to these spaces has been the challenge. If we work as an intersectoral team with the people in transport, we think we can bring these costs a little lower. The demand can grow, and then it will be faster to go to Windi, it will be faster to go to Kidepo. You don't need almost a whole day. Probably you need about 30 minutes or an hour to get into these spaces. Product development is another area that I would like to passionately talk about. It all begins with the product. the competitiveness of Uganda is constrained by the product itself. We need to have a more diverse product, and we need to have an improved quality of the product. What we had previously was a gross focus on the natural and wildlife product. But I think Uganda has a lot to offer. And as you can see, we are well blessed with water resources. We are well blessed with culture, a very diverse culture. But the focus in those areas has been a little limited. And I dare to say that many of the domestic visitors or tourists, me and you, are more interested in these products, and mice as well. Water resources, Kalangala probably is the most visible product that we can talk about. Yet we have so many islands all over the country. I think something is being done more and more in Lake Bunyonyi, but you will agree with me that many of the water resources have not been developed for purposes of tourism adequately to attract as many people as possible. Culture is another. I think you will all agree with me that when we talk about these cultural events in Buganda, in Busoga, in Toro, in Bugisu, with the Imbalu, they really attract a lot of people. We need to align with these cultural products as a strategy moving forward. I think we had started with the Imbalu ceremony. We work a lot with the Buganda Tourism Board to ensure that we promote all these spaces. Some of them are even cultural spaces. When you talk about the Nambi and Kintu place somewhere in Mitiana, right now it's more of a spiritualist place. Nakaima is another one, but yet could be a very strong tourist attraction. Our focus in that area is going to unlock domestic tourism and also broaden the product offer that we have. Making water transportation safe is also the other area that we're going to work on, and accessibility. Right now, it is only Bugala Island of the 84 that is accessed by ferry. If we can open up Bukasa, Bubeke, and so on and so forth, the opportunities are wide, and tourism will definitely grow. COVID has affected MICE industry. When we talk about MICE, we talk about events, weddings, we're talking about big conferences. We lost the G77 summit that was supposed to be in Uganda in April. The World Health Summit was supposed to be in Uganda. All these we lost because of COVID, but we'll definitely recover when we get out of this problem. The focus on MICE, having a convention center, having better conferencing facilities, is the key to unlocking Uganda's tourism potential. But also we need to broaden our interpretation of MICE. Many people have looked at MICE as conferences alone. Sporting events, musical events. We are planning to host the MAMA, that is the MTV Africa Music Awards sometime next year. Again, it was affected by COVID, but these are events that put us on the international platform. These are events that unlock our visibility all over the world. Imagine when we are on all the MTV-based channels for this musical event, the exposure that we'll get out from there. Amos did talk about the issue of training, and I entirely agree that training, yes, Ugandans were very hospitable people, but when it comes to the skills, on average, we are not performing as well as our regional neighbors, and that you have seen in the number of jobs taken up by our regional neighbors, especially on the management side. The hotel school is being developed into a center of excellence, but we need to move forward into digital training. We need to move forward into having centers of excellence all over the country. We need to move forward into reviewing our curriculum and making sure it meets the needs of the international and local community. Already progress is being made in that direction. And I believe in a year or two, Uganda will be producing some of the very best in terms of hospitality. After all, when it comes to being hospitable people, we are a class apart, everybody recognizes that. Finally, on the issue of digitalization, of course, the world is moving into that direction. It is a fast evolving area that we need to seriously focus on. My thoughts in this area, strategically, we need to support the enterprises to digitize. Quite a number of hotels cannot transact online. Many of them will wait for you to come to the front desk and exchange the money in order for you to access the rooms. But the world is moving on. Somebody who is out there and wishes to come to Uganda would like to make an online booking, an online payment. All these platforms need to be available. Even the domestics, if I'm going to Kabale or I'm going to Kidepo, I would like to sort out all my bills online. The technologies are enabling that, but maybe the uptake at the enterprise level has been a little low. But we need also to work with the ICT industry to ensure that availability of these hotspots is all over the country, and we need to improve on the content. I think Madam Lily brought this out very well. What kind of content are we putting out to be consumed by the rest of the people? And that is actually, palatable and inviting. And that is where the issues of virtual tourism will also come in. We are moving in that direction. I think the Uganda Tourism Board has brought on board a digital and experiential marketing company to help in intensifying and deepening that effort. I want to stop there for now and listen in to the comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And the comments are very many. They're streaming in from all the platforms here on Zoom, but also on Facebook and Twitter. And we're going to try to move as quickly as possible so that we can capture what many of the attendees are saying. But our special guest, we are very grateful for your submissions, and we look forward to getting many of these recommendations rolling, because it will be really sad if we do not move to action. Just a few questions for you before we bring in the other panelists. You did mention that we have targets in relation to the numbers of, foreign tourists. Do we have targets in relation to the number of domestic tourists that we would want to have moving around the country? And is there a sense of how these numbers from our strategy are changing so that domestic tourism fills up gaps that are being left by, the fact that international tourists cannot come in? Mr. Liazi.
Thank you so much for that question. And indeed, when we started focusing on domestic tourism as our primary segment, in as far as tourism is concerned, we set ourselves to achieve at least a number of 3 million visitors by 2020, which we are in right now. We are yet to make an evaluation on how far we've moved in attaining that. But one of the problems or challenges that we have with the measurement of domestic tourism is that it is so broad. Even going to visit your children or your grandparents is part of the domestic tourism. We call it visiting friends and relatives. But our focus now is on the high value tourism experience, that those that go into tourism attraction areas. And we are seeing a greater number of people have not moved with the statistics offhand. But I know that right now in the parks, more domestic tourists visit the parks than it was before, where it was foreign tourists. More people are moving into the Uganda Wildlife Education Center. The Uganda Museum is also picking up, though we're doing a bit of work in having it renovated. Namgongo is one of those attractions that we are working with during the June 3rd event, but we're now talking of prolonging that visit so that at least for 1 week, people are visiting these faith destinations, and we registered about 2 million visitors during that celebratory week. With the cultural events, we may not have the figures with us, but you can see that quite a number of cultural events are attracting increasingly more and more visitors. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that answer. But one would say if we have the figures in relation to international guests and for the local ones, we still have to find the figures. It would someone can conclude that it seems like this has never been a focus. We talk about it, but it doesn't seem to be a focus, and a lot more has to be put in. Because, you know, if you can't visit your own country, why would someone else come and visit it? You did talk about the museum, and Cecilia Oyet asks, talking about opportunities, I was wondering how endowed and up-to-date our National Museum is, and whether efforts are being made to help different cultural groups in Uganda to build up, improve their cultural centers, museums, and especially with the launch of the new cities. So beyond the museum we have here in Kitante, what of other museums, and you know what, so that if I am visiting Gulu, you know, there's other places I can go to on my way to Gulu or while I am there in Gulu. Our special guest, if you could respond to that, and I'll put the same to the CEO of Uganda Tourism Board.
Thank you so much. Again, a lot is being done in trying to improve the Uganda Museum. Those of you who visited the Uganda Museum so long ago will find that a lot has changed now. We've revamped the cultural villages, the cultural village at the Uganda Museum. It is now well renovated and visitable. Unlike a few months ago, the sanitation facilities have been improved, which was a very big problem because this was an old structure and ill-funded. We've also worked on the transport gallery and have plans to expand on the Uganda Museum. That is now talking about the National Museum. But community museums have been supported. You all know about Igongo Museum in Biharwe as you go to Mbarara. I think a lot of collaboration has happened between the National Museum and the Igongo Museum in bringing it to that level. Great Lakes Museum, I think in Ruahi, as you go to Kabale, is another great example of a museum coming up. I think even in Kigezi itself, there is a Kigezi Museum, the national, yes, but also one by, I think, a Belgian guy called Mikas, who has a museum that is visitable. The strategy of opening regional museums is on. Napak Open Museum is one of the projects that is going on. There is the Balonyo site, which has been worked on, and also the Fort Patiko. I had Laura talk about Fort Patiko as one of those sites. All these are still under development process, trying to improve the infrastructure in these places, the documentation, and also the key attractions in these spaces.
Thank you very much. Lily, over to you. And I'll just add that for many of the places that Mr. Liazi has mentioned, I actually have had the opportunity of taking people there. And it's very disappointing that, you know, this was probably 7-8 years ago, you take people to visit the museum, and when you're done with the museum, they have this look on their faces of, was that all? Or you take them to Balonyo and there's no one to meet them. There's no one to tell the story, you know, and you know, we probably have these places, but it doesn't seem like our investment in them has been commensurate. I did visit a place, Washington, D.C., and I said I had 2 days, and I was told, sorry, in 2 days, you're not going to be able to see anything much. You'd need about 5 days. But it seems like in a day, I can see almost everything around the city. In a day, I can see almost everything in Gulu, actually, everything. So over to you, Lily.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thanks everyone. On the issue that is being raised in terms of the investment being put on, I think we have already explained that one, we need to make recognition on the trend that the budget to the tourism sector is increasing, but not enough. If I can just give an example of what is happening within the region, how others are investing, and that is what makes the difference. And Uganda Tourism Board gets 25 billion shillings to do all that it has to do in terms of regulating the sector, marketing the sector domestically, regionally, internationally. We are talking branding, we are talking product development, we are talking content development, I mean, on 25 million Ugandan shillings. And that is equivalent to just about $5 million US. Compare that with Tanzania, that or Kenya that is spending 58 million US dollars for their tourism, you know. I mean, it's not comparable. So we need to be realistic as well when we are saying UTB is not doing their part, you know, so and so is not doing their part. I think Amos put it very well that we need to get the buy-in at the highest level. The people with the powers need to get to understand what tourism is, what tourism can actually do. Like he suggested, if we invested 12 to 20 million US dollars, we will be able to get, you know, 60 million US dollars back out of that investment. So this is something that we are trying to reach out to lobby to the concerned, you know, powers. And that is the only way that we will be able to, you know, turn the industry around. Within the available resources now, the best that we can do is create partnership, you know, between the government and the private sector and see how best we can be able to maximize on the available resources that we have.
All right, thank you. I'm going to come back to you with a number of other questions, but now I'd like to go to Captain. Captain, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So in relation to infrastructure, you did talk quite a bit about infrastructure. There were questions around, you know, what our infrastructure looks like in relation to air travel, but also what can be done right now in relation to ensuring that, you know, places are more accessible. Many times there have been situations of you're traveling from Gulu and people are worried, I'm not going to make it to the airport in time. Do I have another option? And well, yes, we could fly you, but that's not going to be very easy to do so. What's the industry doing to make it even easier for locals to take flights within the country?
I think the most effective way to ensure that the private sector fills in that gap of domestic flights is to improve the infrastructure. What I mean here is that if we have enough hard surface airfields, even if they don't have airports, hard surface airfields can accommodate aircraft of different types. But look at our scenario here. There's the following tourist destinations: Bwindi, Queen Elizabeth National Park, Murchison Falls National Park, Kidepo National Valley National Park, Semliki, Kivale Forest, Lake Mburo, even the islands like Karangala. They all don't have hard surface airfields. So what happens is you would have to have special aircraft which can go into those hard, rough airfields. Now, those that type of aircraft is quite expensive, and therefore the investment is not easy. If we compare ourselves with our neighbors like Kenya or Tanzania, you'll find that every place, Ngorongoro, Cerro Neras, you know, Lake Rukwa National Park. Oh, Masai Mara has like 5 or 6 hard surface airstrips, all weather airstrips. Now that enables the private sector to be able to participate in this. Now, aviation is quite expensive, like I told you. You probably would be talking about one airliner, which the government is trying to procure for Uganda Airlines, costing somewhere in the region of $150 million. Just one aircraft. Of course, with $150 million, if you gave it to Amos Wekesa, you'll probably set up 10 4- or 5-star lodges. So in that order, any type of equipment by air which you get is quite expensive. So now, if you have good hard surface airfields accessing all the key tourist destinations, what will happen is you'll be able to get cheaper aircraft to be able to ensure that transport is a lot easier. And also the maintenance requirements would be lower. Take, for example, we say that now we're going to get expensive tourists. You fly in someone who is a millionaire who wants to go to visit Kidepo National Park, and he lands, the first landing at Kidepo, stones are flying, there's dust all over. The guy is wondering, am I safe here? Yet he's a key person who would tell 5 other millionaires to come and visit Kidepo. So I think there has to be a specific effort in creating hard surface airfields, all-weather surface airfields. Now we only have a handful for civil use. There's Soroti, there's Entebbe, and there is, I think there is Kabale coming up. There's Gulu, which is both military and civil. And that's about it. So I think that is very key in ensuring that the industry grows.
Thank you very much. Amos, one of the things that Captain Rubombora has said is, you know what, if you got this money and gave it to Amos. So the first question I'm going to ask you, and they're going to be a series of questions, so if you could note them down. The first question is, as a private investor in the sector, what support do you receive, if any, from government in order to grow the sector? And you're one of those that has really been vocal and are well placed in the sector. The others questions, I have a question from Monica Rubombora, who is in Johannesburg, and she says, I would like to know how we intend to leverage technology to unlock tourism opportunities, specifically virtual tourism, especially during this lockdown period. I'm seeing this sector springing up here in other areas like Botswana and South Africa. This question was particularly put to you. Then Mr. Paul Bukenya is asking, how can we get a portion of the US dollars, the $9 trillion US dollars back to Uganda? Some practical recommendations. I think Uganda can surely take in an additional $4 billion US dollars away from the current 1.9 trillion. Then I'll just ask one more. Domestic tourism seems to have been, so we go from international to domestic, but even in domestic, it seems like the focus has been the airlight. And Herbert Kakiza, Honest, is asking, how can we promote domestic tourism beyond the few elites? Amos, over to you.
Thank you so much. One, as a person that has taken time and put resources in the industry, when it comes, we've also even joined marine tourism. We bought Uganda's probably best boat on Kazinga Channel. What we really have been able to get from government is mainly tax-based incentives. For example, if you bring in a 4-wheel drive that is specifically designed for tourism, you'll be able to get tax exemptions. From last year, if you brought in a boat that is for tourism purposes, you can get tax exemption. When you bring in building materials, I actually benefited from that this year because I brought in a lot of high quality beddings and stuff from for the lodges, and that was tax exempt. But I believe that government of Uganda does that to avoid what is more important. Investment follows opportunities. How do you get opportunities? We get opportunities by marketing. In fact, if there is one thing that Uganda must change, if there's one thing we must do, whether it is for agriculture, whether it's for tourism, is simply tell the world the opportunities that are available within Uganda. Because that's everything. That's everything that we need. Because when numbers flock in, investment will become very clear. Ugandans are extremely very entrepreneurial people. And I've always told people, and I give them an example. When Ugandan team is going to be playing with, say, Senegal in Kampala, that whole week you'll see a lot of entrepreneurs that come up with caps, with t-shirts, because they see the opportunities in terms of numbers. And marketing, if you look at how they market for those teams coming and the matches, I wish the same effort was put in marketing for local tourism. Now, the other thing that I think we've not mentioned is also change our education system. We studied about the prairies, rainlands, and so on and so forth. So to an average Ugandan, anything foreign is better. When I go to Dubai, I make more, I look better, it's better than my own countries, that kind of stuff. We need to be able to teach children from an early stage, even as parents, as who was listening today. As Amos, I have taken my children across board to see, when they talk about Gulu, you talk about whatever parts of the country my children have been from childhood. But with that, they end up loving the country. Now, you look at the statistics. Last year, Uganda was the second source market for Kenya's tourism. We had 223,000 Ugandans that went to Kenya. They went to Mombasa and their national park. 36,000 went to Dubai. 12,000 went to Zanzibar. 30,000 went to South Africa. Now, these same numbers are not coming into this country. In Kenya, they say an average Ugandan spent $2,000, which means Uganda lost about $450 million to Kenya. Now, I think that UTB has a task. I think that UTB working with people like Laura and sitting down and agreeing. Of course, also Lydian and the group are still new, but I think we need, in many ways, for them to listen such that we can engage in the marketing. Because, marketing is not something you do once, then you say something in 5 months. It is something that you have to be very, very consistent with. I think the other one is that we need to make sure that at UTB, we need to help Lydian such that they do procurement quickly. For example, we've taken almost 2 years, 1.5 years trying to procure PRR farms. And yet when we had the other PRR farms, we had lots of resources. We've probably just seen we've cancelled being able to procure photography and photography and videography people. Now, this idea of procurement and it is actually causing a lot of confusion. Now, we need to find a way of which we can, all of us, support maybe Lillian for these things to happen, because at the end of the day we may talk as much as we want, but if we're not in the market, we will not be there. Like I said, Uganda has ability to get, from research done by World Bank, to make about $12 billion from tourism. That is something that will create lots of opportunities for every other sector in the country. But at the same time, I think we also need to make sure that when tourists come to Uganda, the research has shown that when you come with $1,000 to spend in Uganda, you only spend $400. The $600 is returned to the countries where clients come from. And the reason is that at the airport, there's not a lot of Ugandan manufactured products. Between the airport and Kampala, there's nothing to really buy. When you go to the hotels, there's no information telling you about the troop, the nightlife, whatever opportunities, the shopping centers. That is how you make money from tourism. When someone just comes and stays in the hotel, it is money staying in the hotel. The idea is make sure that this person is able to spend as much as possible. Over to you. Gabriel. Hello?
Just a sec. Thank you, Amos. Thank you very much. Apologies. I was getting some trouble with unmuting my video and audio, but thank you very much, Amos. Hopefully we can come back to you. If you could just prepare for your parting shot, your final word, and I'll ask every panelist to do that. But there are a few more questions we'd like to respond to very quickly. I'm seeing that we have 21 unanswered questions in the Q&A. So panelists, please visit the Q&A. There are many questions there for you to respond to. And then I find it important to say at this point that the people that we have on this webinar, our panelists, you have all done an exceptional job in getting the tourism sector to where it is right now. And we thank you for that. We still, however, need to do very drastic things in order to take the sector to where we want it to go. Because if we continue to treat it like, yeah, eventually we will get there, we may not be doing ourselves any favor. So please, no one is saying that little or nothing has been done. A lot has been done. But because of the circumstances, we need to do even a lot more. I have a couple of questions here, and unfortunately won't get to ask all of them. That's why I keep asking the panelists to go to the Q&A tab. But let's see. Yes, Lily, there are a couple of them for you here. I will start with Apofia, who says, are we sure that we are a safe destination? With what is going around in Kampala, with us not caring much about SOPs, how would we be able to keep our visitors safe? And this reminds me of an incident where a tourist was kidnapped. What effect did that have on the sector, and how are we ensuring that that negative publicity that we had very many people calling and writing about does not continue to affect Uganda, especially as a destination that, you know, is safe or unsafe for tourists? Over to you, Lily.
Thank you very
Lily.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yes.
Thank you very much for those questions. On the safety of the destination, in comparison to other destinations, I will still say that we are a safe destination, and there's no doubt about that. The population in Kampala should do better, should become more responsible citizens, but there are also Ugandans who are being very responsible. The ones who are being irresponsible, we need to help them to become more responsible. Overall, if we compare destination Uganda to others, we are a very safe destination. In ensuring that those who are not being responsible do not impact negatively on the visitors. And when we are talking about the travelers, the visitors, the tourists, we are not only looking at the international ones only, but even the domestic ones. Laura is doing an amazing job with her team, taking a number of Ugandans from one part of the country to another. We need them also to be safe. So as Uganda Tourism Board, we launched an inspection exercise where we are going to the different destinations to audit the product and also inspect the different facilities, especially accommodation facilities, to ensure that they have all the measures in place in implementing the SOPs. I think that's what I would say about the issue of the SOP implementation and the safety of Ugandans and everyone traveling within the country right now as we also prepare. And also to point out that one of the reasons why right now the airport is not yet open is because from the implementation of the SOP, the airport is not yet ready. Yeah, if we open the airport right now, the facility would not provide for people to keep distances, the social distancing, and all the other measures that we need to have in place. So as we work on the airport to fix it and get it right, to a big extent, the major destinations are already implementing the SOP.
All right.
On the past incident of the kidnap of a tourist last year, I think it's one case that we handled really, really very well in terms of crisis communication. The tourist herself said, despite the fact that she was at the point when she was in the hands of the kidnappers, she still felt Uganda was a very beautiful country because even the kidnappers took good care of her. That in itself helped us to overcome that negative publicity very fast. And the coordination between the different sector and players was effectively and efficiently handled. And I think going forward, that is the way we must always handle our crisis communication. Thank you.
Thank you very much. an American friend, Facebook friend, saw that that post, and he wrote on his Facebook, because he was coming to Uganda. He wrote, "Please, world, know that if you kidnap me and ask my wife for any money, she will not give you any money. She will just thank you." That was to make himself safe from kidnappers. All right. There are a number of people who would like to recognize, but we don't have the time to do so. But I'd just like to mention that we have logged into this webinar the Toro Kingdom Tourism Minister, and I hope I get the name right, Owechitibwa Joan Kantu. And she did ask a question, and thank you, our panelists, for responding to that question. Laura, I'd like to come over to you. And yes, many efforts are being made to get Ugandans to travel within the country, to encourage local tourism. However, somebody is asking in relation to vacationing not being a culture in Uganda. How do we get vacationing to become a culture so that people actually know that during the year, I should take off time? And then what we are doing is we're presenting them with the options of what they can do when they decide to go on vacation.
Hi, thank you for the question.
Just Laura, just a second. Let me interrupt you for a second. There's so much interruption from your audio. Is your device plugged into electricity? Okay. Yeah, that's better. No, but it has come back. Unfortunately, the audio, we have a terrible buzz. Okay, the buzz has now stopped. No, it's back now. Okay, if you could try, go ahead and speak.
And now?
The buzz is not there currently.
Is the buzz still on?
No, it isn't.
No?
No, it isn't. So go ahead.
Okay. Yes, so I said this can only be done through communication. As personally, I advocate for travel a lot. Holidays, I travel a lot myself and show people, like I said, you have to show people how they should go on holiday to rejuvenate, to, you know, for whatever reason, and show them what they do at these destinations. I also, and myself and the company, basically try so hard to show people how affordable it is. So that's why I said we aim to demystify travel, you know, so it's not just for the rich, it's not just for the people who are, I don't know, self-employed or entrepreneurs, you know, so we keep communicating about how you can actually take leave and travel somewhere and learn something, especially with family. And the more you travel, the more you learn. Yeah, but otherwise, to say that, I actually don't believe that. Many Ugandans actually love to travel. It's just that we don't maybe see it a lot, but many Ugandans are traveling. As soon as lockdown was lifted, very many people wanted to travel. So it's just about helping them figure out how to, you know, how affordable it is, where they can go, what they can do when they're there, and yeah.
All right. Kevin Biaruhanga and Robert Kavuma, I see you're raising your hands. Please use the Q&A tab, because even if I came over to you, the platform won't allow us to hear you. So please use the Q&A so that we can respond to your questions. Laura, there's also a question around taking advantage of the Airbnb and what cheap options are there. And I will also take note that one of the attendees says, no, we don't want to use dormitories.
Yes, but I'll address the dormitories first. We're trying to do away with the whole belief that budget travel or domestic travel equals budget travel. It doesn't. I've actually been working with quite a number of hotels, lodges, etc. to see how to tailor their products for the domestic traveler, or especially those who are into, you know, in the space, who are trying to renovate, create, you know, additional structures for the domestic traveler. And many of them think it's about just either putting rooms that are like dormitories, or there's nothing wrong with camping, but campsites that have terrible facilities. I believe that domestic travel or budget travel can actually be very comfortable and so much fun, to the extent that even those who can afford better will even end up opting for these spaces that are just more creative and experiential and things like that. So I've been consulting with quite a number of lodges about that experiential travel. And that is, beyond my lovely bed. What am I doing at your facility? What am I experiencing? What stories do I have to tell? What stories am I listening to? That kind of thing. So we're working on that, on basically doing away with the whole dormitory notion for domestic travel. Okay. And then for Airbnb, it's quite a number of travel companies, not just Travelneza, but many others that are also working on having people. I'll talk about how we're doing it. We're reaching out to quite a number of, many people have holiday homes up country. So we're creating an Airbnb of sorts that will basically have people staying over. So I've actually been going to quite a number of these places, especially in the West, and helping them create experiential activities. So wake up in the morning and milk cows, then learn how to make a shabwe, and then go with them to their, that kind of thing, a whole trip, and be able to actually live in that homestead. Yeah, so there's quite a number of initiatives that are going on around that.
All right. Captain, Captain, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, Gabriel.
Okay. Captain, very quickly, what would good connectivity look like? Because you referred to it in your submission. Just give an example, I'm able to go from here to here. What would good connectivity look like?
Well, I think good connectivity for the foreign tourists who would bring in the most revenue we need is to be able to come in at the entry point at Entebbe and immediately fly out to the destination he's interested to visit. If it's Queen Elizabeth National Park or Murchison Falls, they may not quite be interested in going through the traffic jams of Kampala, not so interested in spending 3, 4, or 5 hours on the road, and then another return. They don't have the time to spend. So good connectivity really would be to be able to ensure that people who come in connect to their destination in the shortest time.
Okay.
And I'll take the opportunity also to mention that there's a question from Frank Magoba, which is very legitimate. My campaign to Ministry of Transport, to the different authorities who I have lobbied so that airfields can be done. We have a good road network from Kabale up to Koboko by tarmac, many kilometers of tarmac, but we lack a 2-kilometer strip in Kabale, where a person who doesn't want to go through the 6 hours from Kampala to Kabale can fly from Entebbe directly to Kabale. And I think the Uganda National Road Authority, in conjunction with the ministry concerned with tourism, they should come up with a plan, which plan would enable for every 200 kilometers of tarmac, they allow us 4 kilometers strips in relevant areas, which will enable us to have good air connectivity.
All right.
Over to you now.
Thank you very much. Thank you for answering that question from Frank. It's what I was going to ask you next. We've heard of oil roads, and we've heard of tourism roads. They should also become a focus. And I like that idea of for every 200 kilometers, just give us 4 kilometers. Actually, let me finish with you giving us your parting shot, and then I will go to each of our panelists and end with our special guest.
Okay, now my parting shot is this. One, like I said air transport is a highly capital intensive business, and we cannot grow it optimally with the interest rates that the commercial banks offer in this country. There is need for government to arrange for us, like has been done in other first world countries, to ensure that there are loans with low interest rate. That is what will help the industry to grow. And I would also think that ultimately, when you have a good plan, it's easy to execute growth. We need a good strategic plan which plugs in all the parties, the tourists, the government, the infrastructure, the marketing, and the banking concern, so that Uganda should have, say, for example, in the master plan, the strategic plan, we should have sites which have been identified in different parts of the country where you can have museums, yeah? Even before you get the ability to build the museum. You tell people we need a museum in Fort Portal. For example, my family are ready to offer land for a museum if we could be financed in Fort Portal. I come from Fort Portal. So a good master and strategic plan will help guide this industry to move forward.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. To the rest of the panelists, there is a question from Susanna Ndikwera, and I'd like each of you to touch on it as you give your parting shot. It's in relation to political will. And she says, it's clear to me that you are all very brilliant and passionate about this sector. You have fantastic ideas, which if even one was implemented, we would be far. Clearly, the lack of political will to prioritize this sector is what's keeping you back. I wish I'd said keeping us back. What are you doing to influence the political environment? So let's go over to CEO, Uganda Tourism Board, Madam Lily Ajarova.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. Once again, just to say thank you, Castle, for organizing this discussion on tourism today and inviting me to be part of it. Thank you, and for the audience, thank you very much for the questions and the engagement we have had. And I would like to say two quick things. One, that tourism is not just about only the leisure aspect. Tourism overlaps with so many other activities. There's medical tourism, there's sports tourism, there's cultural tourism, agricultural tourism, agro-tourism. So tourism is a multi-sectoral industry, and we need to interest ourselves of the opportunities that it actually has to offer. Let's not just limit ourselves to talking about the leisure, the consumptive part of it, but also let's talk about the business side of it, because there's opportunity for us, even as Ugandans, to invest in tourism so that we can make it bigger, better, and we can be able to earn more out of it as an economy. And also lastly, to say that for us to be able to effectively market destination Uganda, it's not a responsibility that can be left only to Uganda Tourism Board. I have only, a few staff I'm working with. Yes, we can implement some strategic marketing ideas, but the best way to be able to market this destination effectively is for each and every Ugandan to be proud about their country, to be proud about what they have as what we have as a country in terms of the diversity of the beauty, from culture to landscape to everything that we have, the food we have. We need to be proud of what we have. the reason why so many Ugandans are traveling out of this country is because they don't feel that Uganda is nice. But the opportunity is here with us. We have companies like Travoneza and a few others who are really trying to do their best to push and give you the best deals. And right now is the opportunity as well with the impact of the pandemic. Most of the facilities have drastically cut down their cost, even below 50%. You will be able to go to the national parks or to different destinations within Uganda and actually pay even a quarter of the normal price of the experience and facilities for this season. So please take advantage of it and become the communicator, the PR, the ambassador, the marketeer of Uganda, because it is our responsibility collectively. I wish you all a very wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is our responsibility collectively. So use your social media pages and every other platform to market Uganda. And we'll continue to support Uganda Tourism Board and the other players in the sector. I'd like now to go to over to Laura.
Am I still buzzing?
Yes. No,
Still
we
buzzing.
can hear you. No, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, so my final remarks are just that I believe that Uganda, as a country, should focus on domestic travel as much as it does on bringing tourists in, because when we talk about Ugandans not being proud and not being and not traveling in their country as much, it's that they were not just born like that. It's because of the way we have made them feel. When someone feels like a substitute or not a priority, like only remembered when there's a pandemic and something like that, then they will never feel that pride and talk about their country the way we would want them to. So I believe we should focus on domestic travel as a constant, the same way, like basically give it the same priority and start actually speaking to the Ugandan traveler. Like I said earlier, a lot of the industry was really crippled because all of a sudden they didn't know how to start speaking to the Ugandan traveler. They didn't know how to quickly change their business models and things like that. So I hope this will be a lesson for all of us, and so to fully integrate the domestic traveler in the pricing and the product offering, everything. But also for the government, UTV, ETC, and investors to focus a lot more on other types of tourism, like Lily said as well. Historical, cultural, we've actually had a team going around different towns, mapping a lot of these sites, and there's so much that we don't know. I'll touch on just something a little. Someone asked about virtual tourism, and I know what they mean by, especially the Southern African countries, how they're already tapping in on this. You actually go and you pay about $5 for a short video, and where we are actually working on that domestic, documenting quite a bit of it. So you pay, for example, let me not use dollars, the short, 20,000 Uganda shillings to watch a video of how Karamojongs, do a lot of cultural things and all the Bachwezi, and this, we've been documenting quite a bit, so we're actually moving into that. Basically, for investors to start to focus on other opportunities, like the islands and transport to these places. So basically, in a nutshell, it's just about the domestic traveler and speaking to them and getting domestic travel going, not as a substitute. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Laura. Many of the attendees have been giving some of the options, talking about hot springs, talking about rock painting and many other things. Now I'd like to invite Amos, but before Amos comes, I'd like us to have our last poll question. As that poll question comes, Amos, somebody asked me this week, do you think I am the focus when they are charging in dollars, it means they are trying to attract somebody else, not me. It was very complicated for me to answer that. So the question is, what one thing can the travel and tourism sector do to address the challenges currently being experienced in the sector? What one thing can the travel and tourism sector do to address the challenges currently being experienced in the sector? Is it invest in branding and promoting domestic tourism? Is it developing and test develop and test SOPs for security and safety of tourists? Is it drastically reduce entry fees and accommodation rates at the tourist sites, especially for nationals? Or is it to provide financial stimulus for tourism investment and operations? Majority are saying investment in rebranding and promoting domestic tourism. And the option that has the next most people picking it is provision of financial stimulus for tourism investment and operations. All right, more than half of us have taken the poll, so I will end it right now. And so majority of us, 45%, say investment in rebranding and promoting domestic tourism. Then 36% say provide financial stimulus for tourism investment and promotions. Thank you very much for taking the poll. Amos, Mr. Wekesa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Bwana Gabriel. I pretty much want to agree with the polls because if we did the marketing and branding, but also marketing and branding is not just an issue of resources, money, it's also an issue of the competent people being able to actually articulate that very well. For example, UTB were hiring some guys to do videography and photography. When UTB plays this role of doing videography and photography, then that photographer and videographer is distributed among Ugandans, traveling Ugandans within Uganda, the banks, at all the receptions at hotels. You'd see that a lot of interest in this country would change. A lot of the people are using private phones and trying to get videos and pictures that can't really sell as much as we want to. So really UTB has to play its role. We have to help them play their role. But at the same time, we'll be able to engage their population. If we did branding and did it so well, which will need resources and people with competence, because branding and marketing is not something you wake up and just simply talk. We must see results. People that have had results come out of branding and marketing. So we need to get a team that can be able to support people like Lillian who are there to actually bring out results, importantly. When it comes to the political will, I know, Gabriel, you've been one of those people that has invited people like myself on talk shows. We have to find a way in which the tourism industry engages the media houses in this country. The reason why politics is such a very big topic in this country, leaving out the economic growth, even when politics is meant to be a science of governing society, which should bring in economic growth, there is things discussed don't have a lot of substance in as far as growing the country is concerned. Now we need to engage the media fraternity about engaging the politicians on this topic of tourism, growing agriculture, growing sectors that can actually help the country. Let everybody, if I was asking a president of FDC, a president of NUC, the president of Uganda, I'll be asking them, what is your dream towards improving tourism? What is your dream towards improving agriculture? What's your dream? And these people must come out with proper answers to this, but we're not prompting them towards that. The other thing that we've done, me as a person, of course, I've been on many media houses, but I've also understood that just talking is not enough. We also need to engage individuals who are decision makers to invest in the sector. The reason why Kenya has done so well, the president himself is an owner in tourism. He owns all the heritage group of hotels. If you look at the vice president who had laid, he's also an investor. The minister of tourism himself is one of the biggest investors in Mombasa. And when you have interest and you know that you'll be able to lose if you don't work so hard, you will lose out so much. We have a great country. We have ability to create jobs. We have ability to make money. This idea of us borrowing money from abroad and becoming indebted can be reduced or even done with if we focus on marketing this country and position our products and our services as a country.
All right. Thank you very much, Amos. Finally, let's go to our special guest, Mr. Vivian Yazi.
Thank you so much, moderator, and to all our participants for this wonderful discussion that we've had. Indeed, it has also helped us on the side of government to calibrate the thought process and also the strategies that we are adopting in moving the tourism sector forward. I want, first of all, to also re-echo the importance of tourism to the communities. When you travel, there is something you do to uplift the livelihoods of the people down in those different spaces that you visit. When you buy some bananas, sweet bananas, or buy mangoes along the way, you're actually contributing in one way or another to a better livelihood of these people. So it's important that we understand that we are not just in a leisurely activity, but we're in an activity that redistributes income growth, that uplifts the rural economy, especially where these attractions are. Having said that, the issue of political will is very central to getting tourism on the decision-making table. As Amos put it very well, and I think we re-echoed that previously, when we have more politicians investing or being invested into the tourism industry, then we will see a gradual change in this area. Investing in media and also, continuing the coordination and talk about tourism in the media and holding our politicians accountable to what they have done in uplifting the plight of tourism will be very important. The focus of this discussion has tilted a lot on domestic tourism, and I totally agree that you can't sell what you don't love yourself. We need, first of all, to enjoy our own country and interest the rest of the world to enjoy the country. One of the issues that is there is the affordability of travel. And I think in order to address the issue of affordability, we need to provide a wide range of choice from hotels, homestays, dormitories again, yes, for the schools and the rest, in order to allow people to move. And the second one is on accessibility. Yes, we did talk about the air transportation, especially for the high-end travelers who don't have a lot of time and are probably not able to undergo all that long distance. But the roads are much better. The water transportation is getting better. The other is on the diversity of our tourism attractions. We've all agreed that much of the product setting has been mainly wildlife. We need to improve on culture. We need to improve on water. We need to improve on events. And these will draw in more people, will draw in more of the resources. Parting, I need to say, yes, marketing is the key to everything. We need to build visibility, but also let us invest in the tourism sector. Let's walk the talk. Each one out there, I'm sure you can do one or two things, either as a combined group or as an individual, to invest in the tourism sector. As we collectively invest, we'll build this tourism sector, and let's travel, plan to go somewhere this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, our special guest and all our panelists, for a very, very enlightening discussion. Just allow us a few more minutes to let you know how we're going to move forward. And I'd like to invite back Dr. Christine Ondoa, who will give us a way forward from our discussion today. What are our next steps? Doctor, over to you. As we get Dr. Ondoa, attendees, thank you very much for all your contributions. The chat has been very, very active. We're taking note of what we have in the chat room, the questions responded to, even the ones not responded to, and we will put that in the report. Doctor is now ready. Dr. Ondoa, over to you. Dr. Ondoa? Just a second. All right, if Dr. Ondoa, she is up country and therefore could be having a few challenges. Okay, there she is. She's back. All right. It seems like Dr. Ondoa, yes, yes, we can now see you and hear you. Go right ahead.
To do the closing and the closing prayer, zooming from Moyo and the internet is unstable. My internet is unstable, so I'm requesting Dr. Magara to take on this responsibility now.
Dr. Magara, over to you, because the
No?
internet in Moyo is not will not be able to enable Dr. Ondoa to communicate. So yes, doctor, we have had your request, and Dr. Magara is ready to give us a way forward. Doctor?
Okay, thank you very much. And sorry about that lack of connectivity for Dr. Ondoa. Very, very special thanks to our chief guest, Mr. Vivian Liazi, and all the panelists. Thank you so much for making the time. It's been a very engaging discussion. I've been following all through. Lots of ideas. I trust that each of the panelists has also picked up ideas from the others. Those of you in business, I hope you'll get business out of this engagement. We shall come visiting us, Castle, and I hope we can get some concessions when we come to visit. But thank you. It's been very, very engaging. And on a serious note, I believe that there are a lot of ideas that have come up which can be processed and helped to take us to another level. We also, it's also our hope that in meetings like this, we can have further off webinar meetings. Some ideas have come up which can be discussed by the panelists and others who are attending outside the meeting. And so we do hope that engagement will be productive both for you and what you do, but on a larger note for the country. I was really intrigued by what Amos said about the potential of Uganda to earn $12 billion on tourism. We are really scratching the surface, really scratching the surface. And I would personally find it sad if this potential is, as often happens, taken by foreigners. I mean, we like it to develop, but I do hope that we can find ways in which Ugandans can benefit from these opportunities that are out there. So thank you. Our time is fast spent, and we will be continuing. We are continuing all the way to the 19th of December. We're also working on the post-webinar documents and to make them available for the relevant formats for those who need them, either as policymakers or practitioners, private sector, social groups, and so on. So thank you for joining us. Thank you very much, participants, for taking these 3 hours of your Saturday morning. Really value that. And the attendance has been quite steady throughout this time. And those who are joining us on social media as well, those who have been tweeting, thank you all. So next week, we'll continue the conversations. We'll be looking at public-private partnerships. One of the things that has come out in these 12 or so weeks that we have talked is the need to have more engagement between the public and private sector. And the pandemic has really exposed that in almost every sector. We can't operate in silos anymore. We need to be talking with each other. It will actually work out better for the public sector. Your work gets done much better, and you get the credit for it. And the private sector can also do what they need to do and become more successful at what they do. So do remember to join us next week. I will now close with a word of prayer. Let us pray. Thank you, Lord, for this time that we've had. At the beginning, we invited your presence to be with us and to guide us. And there has been a sense of a fact that we are really touching core issues. It's not just been talking on the surface. So thank you for all our panelists. Thank you for our special guests and the participants. And we pray that your hand will be upon them as they do their work. We pray for the tourism board that they will really take in that central role and get all the help they need to move our country forward, and for the ministry as well, and all the private players that we've had, and others who've been listening, and others who will get to watch this post on Facebook. We pray, Lord, that you will help us to reach our full potential. We now ask that you bless the rest of our activities and our time this weekend. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Thank you very much, Dr. Magara, and thank you very much, everybody that has attended this webinar. Somebody was asking whether they will receive the video. In fact, if you went over to Castle's Facebook page right now, this video is there. So you can be able to actually share it with other people that did not attend. Now, next week, public-private partnerships. If you would like part of the conversation to touch on public-private partnerships in the tourism sector, register and log in so that we can get the discussants next week to also talk about PPPs, but in the tourism sector, because part of the conversation today has told us that that's going to be very important. So thank you very much for today, and let's continue this discussion online and next week. God bless you.